Chapter 2107. Returning to U City 2. I'm going out. When Lung Ruoxue heard this, she quickly replied. If she wanted to defeat this giant boss, it would probably take a long time. She still had her senior brother to save and many other things to do. She really didn't have that much time right now. When she thought of this, she asked again if there's a chance in the future they'll challenge him again. Is that okay? No problem. If Neo wants to challenge him, any time is fine. Azure promised. That's good. He'll go out first. Lung Ruoxue nodded. All right. Azure laughed as he replied. Then, with a thought, he moved Lung Ruoxue and her spirit beasts out. However, he had left out Demon. The place where Lung Ruoxue was moved out was also in their own garden. At this moment, Uncle Long and the others were sitting in the garden and talking about something. When they felt something was wrong, they quickly turned around and saw Lung Ruoxue, who was not far away. Instantly, everyone's faces were filled with joy. Shue, you finally came out. Oh, he advanced. Uncle Long's serious face bloomed into a smile, while Bing Yao was extremely excited to see Lung Ruoxue. Shue, I've been waiting for you. Bing Yao's eyes were filled with tears as he pretended to be pitiful. Get lost. It's only been half a day since we came out. Why did you wait so long? Uncle Long glanced at Bing Yao and scolded him with a smile. It is. The time in the special training area is accelerated, and the time they spent there added together is less than a day outside. Why? After waiting for so long, you're complaining that you're tired. Song Yi, who was in Lung Ruoxue's arms, asked with a look of disdain. Upon hearing this, Bing Yao shrunk his neck and said in fear, It's not bitter, not tiring. I was just exaggerating. It just means that I really miss Shue. My ass. You want Shue to go with you to save Qin Yang, right? Song saw through Bing Yao's thoughts and said directly, I do have that idea, but it's up to you whether we can go or not. If you don't allow us to go, we wouldn't dare to go. Bing Yao looked at Song Dao with a fawning expression. You're smart. Neo has reached the divine, sovereign realm. You can go and try to save Qin Yang. However, they'll still say the same thing. I won't help you. Azure said with absolute certainty. I know, we'll try our best. Bing Yao said helplessly. However, with Shue Air's heaven and earth bangle, their chances of winning should be very high. When Lung Ruoxue heard that Song was no longer stopping her, she hurriedly said, Then let's not delay any further and set off as soon as possible. Right, where's the demon? Why don't I see him? Isn't that Brat Yi in Senior Song's control room? Why didn't he come out with you? When Uncle Long heard Lung Ruoxue's question, he asked in bewilderment. Song. Hearing Uncle Long's words, Lung Ruoxue lowered her head and looked at Song, who was in her arms. Her beautiful eyes were filled with questions. I came out in a hurry and forgot about him. Cold laughed dryly, then unwillingly moved out the evil that was destroying everything in the control room. The moment Evil saw Cold, it was as if he had seen his enemy. His face darkened and he roared, Damned Song, you actually dared to deliberately leave me inside. I didn't do it on purpose, I forgot. However, the credibility of his words wasn't high. At least, Uncle Long and the others definitely wouldn't believe him. Lung Ruoxue looked at Evildoer and Song helplessly. The evildoer made Song so angry that he even ignored her. From this, it could be seen how great Song's ability was. You forgot? Forget your head. No one would believe it, let alone the evildoer. However, he could do nothing to this fellow. In his frustration, he snatched Song from Lung Ruoxue's arms and threw it far away. Then he stretched out his long arms and hugged Lung Ruoxue tightly. Arg, you big pervert. Let go of my girl. In the distance, Cold's roar could be heard. In an instant, he ran back and faced off with Evildoer. This is my girl. The demon gritted his teeth and warned. It's mine. Song was very stubborn. It's mine. The demon didn't give in either, and the two of them were in a stalemate. When Uncle Long saw this scene, he was so helpless that he didn't know what to say. Logically speaking, this man and beast should not be young, but why were they still so childish? All of you, stop quarreling. I've said it before, I don't belong to any of you. I belong to myself. At this moment, Lung Ruoxue, who could not take it anymore, roared. Shue, Nyo. Upon hearing this, both the man and the beast looked at Lung Ruoxue with tears in their eyes. Then, they said in unison, "You don't want us anymore? Then what should we do?" "Oh, you all belong to me, and am still mine." Lung Ruoxue said calmly. "Yes, I belong to Shue, The demon was the first to speak. "I also belong to Nyo," Azure said, unwilling to be outdone. However, he was a step slower than the demon. After saying that, it shot a provocative look at the demon and tried to jump into Shue's arms. However, it was stopped by the demon. After trying a few times, Song saw that his goal was not successful and simply burst into tears. "Woo-woo, you're too much a bully," Blue cried with unusual sadness. Those who didn't know would definitely think that something big had happened, but in fact, it was only because it couldn't jump into a certain girl's arms. Seeing Song bawling, Lung Ruoxue and the others were speechless. This Song really didn't care about his image. He was a senior expert. Why was he acting like a rascal? After a long time, Lung Ruoxue saw that Song was still crying and peeking at her as he cried. She sighed helplessly and could only take the initiative to carry Song. As for Song, who had succeeded in his scheme, he immediately broke out into a smile. He even glared at the evildoer provocatively, his face filled with pride. However, the demon miraculously did not get angry this time. Instead, he smiled faintly and said, "What are you so proud of?" Shue has always been friendly towards Little Beastie, so of course, she's no exception to you. He directly drew Azure into Beastie's range. When Azure heard these words, he wasn't angry or annoyed. In his heart, as long as he could win favor, it was fine. As for why he was favored, there was no need to fuss about it. When Lung Ruoxue saw that the two of them were no longer at daggers drawn, she heaved a sigh of relief. At the same time, she hurriedly said, "Let's go now." With proper business, these two probably wouldn't go head-to-head with each other. With that, Lung Ruoxue gave Uncle Long and the others a look, then looked at her godfather. When Master Ning received Lung Ruoxue's gaze, he immediately said, "Shue, you can't leave me behind this time. And, First Elder, you can stay at home and keep watch." Lung Ruoxue thought for a moment. There had to be someone in the family. After that, she congratulated First Elder on his advancement and promised to celebrate with him after she saved Second Senior Brother. The Grand Elder knew that he would only be a burden if he went to the Divine Lord's manor, so he did not object. Chapter 2108, Returning to U City 3, just like that, Lung Ruoxue, the demon, Uncle Long, Ao Jia, Bing Yao, the master of the Ning family, and a few beastie left in a hurry. The next day, Lung Ruoxue and the rest had already reached the vicinity of the Imperial City. As they neared the Imperial City, Lung Ruoxue specially dressed up Uncle Long and the others. This time, she did not ask Qing Ju to change her gender. She only took the disguise pill. However, for the safety of her godfather, she asked Qing Ju to use this skill on him. Seeing his chest, Master Ning's face darkened. Uncle Long and the others simultaneously suppressed their laughter and lowered their heads, but their trembling shoulders revealed their thoughts at the moment. Seeing them like this, the Ning family master's face darkened even more. "Shue, as the saying goes, we should share our blessings and difficulties together. You can't just turn me into a woman. I think they should change too." The master of the Ning family pointed at Uncle Long and Ao Jia. Although he was usually afraid of Uncle Long, he couldn't care so much at this time. When Uncle Dragon and Ao Jia heard this, they were so angry that they glared at her. Then, they looked at Lung Ruoxue pitifully. Their eyes were red as they said, "Shue, you can't be that cruel. They didn't want to be women. Godfather, you have a point. It's also safer this way." Lung Ruoxue hesitated for a moment before she replied, ignoring the pleading looks of Uncle Long and Ao Jia. Even though she knew that Uncle Long and Ao Jia would definitely be angry if she said this, it was not good for them to watch her godfather's drama. Hence, she could only let them share their blessings and difficulties. Seeing that Lung Ruoxue had agreed, the master of the Ning family was extremely proud and felt more balanced in his heart. However, Uncle Long and Ao Jie's faces turned black instantly. Then, the two of them glared at the master of the Ning family, wishing they could swallow him alive. However, the master of the Ning family did not care at all. At most, he would be beaten up by them. To be able to turn them into women to keep him company, it was worth it to be beaten up. The master of the Ning family made a face of death. Uncle Dragon and Ao Jie were furious when they saw him acting like a scoundrel. But then, they felt their bodies change. Their chests became higher, their waists became slimmer, and their hips became rounder and more elastic. Sob. They didn't want to be women. At this moment, Bing Yao, who saw two more beauties in front of him, said recklessly, "Uncle Long, you guys are so beautiful." Uncle Long and the other two had turned into beautiful women. They were all stunning and had hot bodies. Although they couldn't be compared to Lung Ruoxue, they were on par with Wu Ling. Bing Yao was dazzled and couldn't see anything. He felt that his eyes weren't enough. He didn't know which one he should look at. However, his praise for Uncle Long and the other two infuriated them so much that they started chasing after Bing Yao and fighting him. When they threw the badly beaten Bing Yao in front of Lung Ruoxue, the three of them requested at the same time to turn Bing Yao into a woman. "You bastard." She had clearly forgotten about him just now, but this kid delivered himself to her door. Didn't he deserve it? "Shui, don't." Bing Yao, who had been beaten up, begged with his pig-like face. However, Lung Ruoxue was unable to help him. So who could he blame? Wasn't he the one who delivered himself to her door? When Bing Yao's gender was changed, the only male out of the six of them was the demon. However, no one asked Lung Ruoxue to change the demon into a woman. From this, it could be seen how lucky the evildoer was. In fact, it wasn't that Uncle Long and the others didn't want to make such a request, but they had to consider the consequences of doing so. Not to mention whether the demonic man would be angry. Even if he really changed his gender, he would probably still be like now, flirting with Shui or without any restraint. The moment they thought of the scene of two women, they had goosebumps all over their bodies. Therefore, they had long given up on this idea. The combination of 5 women and 1 man also made the evildoer a happy man in the eyes of others. He attracted countless eyes like the moon surrounded by stars. As they walked along the main street of Imperial City, Lung Ruoxue glanced at the black-faced evildoer and teased, "Evildoer, so many men are envious of you. What's there to be envious of?" The demon gritted his teeth. He really didn't want his ears to be too good. However, the soft discussions of the people in the city still entered his ears without exception. He was also treated as a descendant of a large family who had come out to gain experience. Of course, what they were most envious of were the few beautiful maids who followed him. Thinking of these maidservants in the eyes of others, the demon's heart was filled with endless depression. At this time, a young man with a wretched appearance blocked their way. He raised his devilish eyebrows and glanced at the man. He said indifferently, "Is there something? I want to buy a maid from you." The wretched-looking man said straightforwardly, "I'm not selling." The demon didn't even think about it. These people couldn't sell it, and even if he did, no one would be able to afford it. When Uncle Long and the others heard the vulgar man's words, they were so angry that their faces instantly darkened, and a storm was about to break out at any moment. However, the wretched-looking man clearly did not take the evildoer's rejection to heart. He even ignored the ugly expressions on Uncle Long and the others' faces and continued, "You're alone, so you can't enjoy so many maids, right? Why don't you sell one to me? We can be friends, don't worry. I definitely won't mistreat you. I'm willing to pay a lot of money, as long as you're willing to sell it. How is it?" After the lecherous man finished speaking, he began to size up Uncle Long and the others, feeling very good about himself. It was as if he was picking out goods that he liked. He was full of confidence as he waited for the other party to agree. The reason why he was so confident was because he felt that the conditions he offered were very good and would definitely satisfy the other party. However, his lecherous eyes made Uncle Long and the others want to dig out his eyes and throw him into the endless sea to feed the fish. Isn't this too wretched? Uncle Long and the others didn't even need to think to know that this guy was probably thinking about something in his mind when he looked at his gloomy eyes that were flashing with an inexplicable light. Furthermore, it would definitely not be anything good. Just as Uncle Long and the others were about to explode, the demon rejected again. I said I'm not selling. I won't sell any of them. Ew. Don't refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. Do you know who I am? It won't do you any good if you anger me. The vulgar man saw that there was no room for discussion, so he could only threaten. I don't care who you are, get lost. Good dogs don't block the way. The evildoers said impatiently. Then they ignored the vulgar man, walked around him, and went straight ahead. If they could, they really want to give that wretched man a good beating. However, this was the imperial city, and it was better to be safe than sorry. Therefore, they did not want to cause trouble as soon as they arrived. Otherwise, he would not have let the vulgar man off so easily. Damn it, you will regret this. I won't let you off. As he watched evildoer and the rest leave, the vulgar man was so angry that he started to hop on the spot. However, as he was alone, he did not dare to chase after them. He glared at Lung Ruoshua and the rest for a long time before he left with a face full of hatred. After Lung Ruoshua and the rest got rid of the vulgar man, they immediately found an inn to stay in. The inn they were looking for this time was the largest and most luxurious in the imperial city. The price was not cheap either. Naturally, this inn belonged to the Divine Master's residence. After booking the rooms, Lung Ruoshua and the rest went upstairs. Their rooms were on the 3rd floor, and they were 2 adjacent suites. There were 2 rooms in each suite. After they entered one of the suites, they looked at the luxurious decorations in the room and the living room and didn't know what to say. This was because the decorations here were too similar to the Divine Master's residence. That was luxury. It was extremely luxurious. The entire room and living room were gorgeous, with silver as the main color tone, paired with bright gold. It looked shiny. Although the furnishings inside were expensive, in reality, other than being decorative, they did not help in cultivation at all. Even so, a day's stay in this suite was still sky high. Little girl, why do we need 2 such expensive suites? It's a bit of a waste. After the master of the Ning family finished looking at it, he felt a little heartache for the money. Damn it, 100 top-grade crystals for a day of living here. Isn't this daylight robbery? Hee hee. Godfather, we want 2 suites to hide for people. After all, there are a few of us. It doesn't make sense for all of us to be squeezed into one room. Lung Ruoshua explained with a smile. Little guy, don't mind this little money. We don't lack money. Hearing Master Ning's words, Song Yi said. At this moment, Song's appearance had also changed at Lung Ruoshua's request. It was no longer a Totoro, but a snow-white rabbit with no mixed hair. All right then. The master of the Ning family nodded and immediately felt relieved. After everyone sat in the luxurious living room and chatted for a while, they were about to leave when they suddenly heard a commotion outside. Following that, their room door was open from the outside. Lung Ruoshua raised her brows when she saw this scene. Was someone trying to cause trouble again? After all, their room was locked. Then, a group of fierce-looking brawny men swarmed in from outside. Chapter 2109. You're very interested in me. 1. These brawny men were all tall, strong, and had extraordinary strength. Their faces and bodies carried a murderous aura that was almost tangible. From this, it could be seen that these people had fought their way out of the flashes of blades and shadows of swords. However, it was precisely this group of people that were clustered around the vulgar man they had met on the street earlier. Lung Ruoshua couldn't help but raise her brows when she saw this. She was extremely curious about the vulgar man's identity. She didn't know where this fellow came from to actually have such a subordinate. Is there something? Lung Ruoshua opened her mouth indifferently. I'm here to find your master. The wretched-looking man said arrogantly. Then, he glanced at Lung Ruoshua in disdain. This woman was the ugliest among all the women here. Hence, he did not even bother to look at her. May I know why this young master is looking for my master? Lung Ruoxue asked with a smile. Oomph. Where's your master? The vulgar-looking man raised his brows. What he meant was, I don't want to talk to a maidservant. Get your master to come out. However, his meaning was ignored by Lung Ruoxue. Lung Ruoxue laughed in her heart. Wasn't the evildoer sitting on the chair? She actually asked her where her master was? Was this considered a wise advisor? Or was it that all self-righteous powerhouses had their noses up in the air and could not see others? Even though Lung Ruoxue was thinking this in her heart, she did not show it on her face. Then, she smiled and said, I'm the spokesperson of my master. It's the same if you tell me anything. You can make the decision? The wretched-looking man said doubtfully. Of course. Lung Ruoxue nodded her head with certainty. However, the vulgar man didn't bite at all. A touch of disdain hung on his slightly pale face, and he said, Are you even worthy of speaking to me? Get lost. Get your master to come out and talk to me. Or let these beauties come out and say it. You're an ugly monster. Get lost to the side. Don't ever let me see you again. I feel like puking just by looking at you. He was on the verge of humiliating Lung Ruoxue. When Uncle Long and the others heard this, their foreheads were filled with black lines. Their eyes were filled with sympathy for the vulgar man. However, their sympathetic gazes were treated as fear and concern by the vulgar man. When Lung Ruoxue heard the lecherous-looking man's words, she was momentarily stunned. Was she being humiliated? However, was she really that ugly now? Although her appearance had changed greatly after taking the disguise pill, she couldn't be considered ugly, right? At least in her eyes, he was still very pretty. So, there must be something wrong with this wretched man's eyes. As she thought about this, Lung Ruoxue said unhurriedly, You think I'm ugly? Just nice, I don't really like you either. However, if you want to talk to my master directly, I only have 2 words to tell you, and that is no way. You, how dare you? Do you know who I am? After the vulgar man heard Lung Ruoxue's words, he was so angry that he started jumping around on the spot. However, the aura around him was a little weaker. In addition, there were too many people around him with auras that were stronger than his. Hence, he looked like a jumping clown, which was even more ridiculous. When Lung Ruoxue heard his words, she was even more infuriated. You don't have any words on your face. How would I know who you are? You tell this ugly woman who I am. The wretched-looking man pointed to a brawny man beside him. My young master is a direct descendant of the chief steward of the divine master's estate. The burly man who was being pointed at said. A look of disdain flashed across his eyes, which was coincidentally caught by Lung Ruoxue. Seeing this, Lung Ruoxue smiled without a change in her expression, then said, So you're the descendant of the chief steward of the divine lord's estate. No wonder she's still not weaned off milk. Look at you. You have so many people accompanying you when you're out visiting. Is the chief steward of the divine master's estate afraid that you'll get lost? You're the one who's lost. I'm not here to visit. Lung Ruoxue's words made the lecherous-looking man's face turn red with anger. However, his aura was indeed not something he could display. Even if he was angry, he was weak and had a low presence. However, men were all prideful. If someone said that a man had not weaned, no man would be able to stand it. Then what are you doing here? Ignoring the vulgar man's anger, Lung Ruoxue pretended to be confused and asked, I'm here to buy people. The wretched-looking man roared. Didn't my master say so? Our people are not selling. Lung Ruoxue said, feeling a slight headache. From the looks of it, this fellow was probably trying to force the purchase. I cannot sell it. As expected, the vulgar man said angrily, his eyes instantly widening. Don't tell me you plan on snatching it by force. Hearing this, the curiosity on Lung Ruoxue's face deepened. You're right. Since you refuse a toast and want to drink a forfeit, then don't blame me for being impolite. The lecherous-looking man was very cooperative with Lung Ruoxue's words. After he finished speaking, he even cast a smug glance at the evildoer who had been sitting on the chair without saying a word. His face was filled with provocation. How do you want to be impolite? Lung Ruoxue continued to set a trap for the vulgar-looking man, guiding him to continue with her words. You'll know soon enough. The wretched-looking man was obviously a little carried away. Then he turned to the brawny man beside him and shouted, "Take all the people here away." The vulgar-looking man gave the order, and the brawny men who were standing still immediately swarmed forward, surrounding Lung Ruoxue and the others. These burly men had at least the strength of a god king. On the other hand, people like Lung Ruoxue looked weak on the surface. The most powerful person among them was a demon, but he was only at the cultivation level of a god monarch. As for the maidservants, in order to match their status, their strength could only be even lower. This was also the main reason why the burly men did not take them seriously. In their hearts, Lung Ruoxue and the others should be some young master from a large family clan who did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. He must have brought the maidservants out to train and have fun. Yet, they had offended the head butlers, Junior. Who could they blame? Who asked them to be so blind? The burly man had no pressure dealing with them, and Lung Ruoxue and the rest were rather cooperative. They even showed a fearful expression at the right time and continued to have Lung Ruoxue as the representative. What are you guys doing? This is the Imperial City, not a place where you can do whatever you want. Upon hearing this, the brawny men couldn't help but laugh. One of them even said, "Hee hee, little girl, since you know that this is the Imperial City, how dare you go against the people of the Divine Master's estate? Aren't you looking for death? What happened to the people of the God Lord's estate? Could it be that the people of the Divine Master's estate could be unreasonable? Could it be that the people of the Divine Master's estate could bully others? If the people of the Divine Master's estate had a bad reputation, it would not be good for the Divine Master's reputation. So, as a member of the God Lord's estate, you should be more careful of your words and actions." Lung Ruoxue said earnestly. Upon hearing this, the burly men laughed even more heartily. After all, this was the first time they had met someone who dared to lecture them. After they had laughed enough, they then turned to Lung Ruoxue and said sternly, "Little girl, you're quite courageous. Unfortunately, our God Lord's estate is the law of the divine realm. In Yu City, whatever we say goes. If we say one, no one is allowed to say two. Therefore, you can only admit that you are unlucky." Chapter 21:10. You're very interested in me? Too, all right then. I'll admit that I'm unlucky. Lung Ruoxue spread her hands helplessly. Uncle Long and the others had not expressed any opinions from the beginning to the end. Seeing how Lung Ruoxue was so cooperative, the burly men were stunned. These people were too gutless, weren't they? He's actually so easy to talk to. When they first came, they thought that they would have to do something. He didn't expect that the other party would accept his fate so easily. However, on second thought, this seemed to be expected. After all, they were from the Divine Master's estate. In the entire Divine Realm, there was no one who dared to challenge the Divine Realm Lord. Just as the brawny men were in a daze, the wretched man was a little dissatisfied and directly roared, "What are you guys doing? Hurry up and capture these people." The brawny men came back to their senses and were slightly dissatisfied in their hearts. However, who asked the other party to have such a strong backing? For the sake of the Buddha, they couldn't do anything to the vulgar man, even if they were to charge at the chief butler. However, all of them had the same thought in their hearts. Then, someone took out a rope and wanted to tie Lung Ruoxue and the rest up. However, Lung Ruoxue requested, "No need to tie us up. We'll just follow you." Upon hearing this, the brawny man who was about to tie the man up nodded and retracted the rope. This was the first time he had seen someone being caught so cooperatively. This would save him a lot of trouble. But why did he feel a deep sense of uneasiness in his heart? He could not understand. Following that, Lung Ruoxue and the rest were escorted out of the room by the burly men. When they reached the ground floor, Lung Ruoxue stopped at the front desk. When the vulgar man saw this, he immediately shouted in dissatisfaction, "Hurry up and go! Don't dawdle. Can you refund us our accommodation fees?" Lung Ruoxue ignored the vulgar man's words and spoke directly to the inn's manager. When the shopkeeper heard this, he felt his head throb. He had been the innkeeper of this inn for many years, but this was the first time he had encountered a customer who asked for a refund. After all, this shop belonged to the Divine Master's estate. For a moment, the shopkeeper was in a dilemma. It was reasonable to say that the guest had just moved into the hotel and was obviously going to be taken away by the butlers junior. It was reasonable for the other party to ask for a refund. However, their hotel had no such precedent. At the thought of this, the manager's brows furrowed into a knot. However, Lung Roashua didn't care if the other party was conflicted. She only used her pair of sparkling eyes to stare unblinkingly at the manager. Her eyes conveyed the message that if you don't refund the money, I won't let you off. At that moment, the wretched-looking man saw that he had been ignored by Hua Ali and shouted again, "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and run. You are so noisy. Don't disturb the manager's thoughts. I'm still waiting for his refund." Lung Roashua raised her brows, obviously a little impatient. Seeing this, the shopkeeper could only bite the bullet and say, "I'm sorry, miss. We have no precedent for this. If there's no precedent, then set one. We didn't even stay here for a day. Are you going to charge us for free? Could this be a black shop opened by the Divine Master's estate? If word of this gets out, let's see who else would dare to stay here." Lung Roashua threatened fearlessly. The moment the shopkeeper heard this, his face turned black. Fuck! He truly admired this little girl's courage. She actually dared to speak such words that would smear the Divine Lord's estate. Wasn't she afraid that her words would be used by others? At that time, they would probably lose their little lives. After thinking for a long time, the shopkeeper looked at the girl who was obviously ready to fight to the death. Finally, he nodded helplessly and agreed. Well, it was not that he did not want to use the name of the Divine Master's estate to suppress people, but there were too many glorious deeds in the Divine Master's estate recently. He did not dare to do anything. Moreover, this was a main hall. There were many people coming and going in the main hall. Many people had already glanced in their direction, and their conversation could not be hidden from others. Perhaps by tomorrow, the matter of him using his power to oppress others would spread throughout the entire immortal realm. He couldn't possibly kill all of his guests, right? Thus, he had no choice but to agree. However, he still admired the bold little girl in front of him. After all, he had served the Divine Master's estate for many years and had never seen such a bold and presumptuous person. He had gained some knowledge today. The other guests in the hall had the same thoughts as him. Hence, they were curious as to why Lung Roashua insisted on paying for the checkout. After Lung Roashua and the rest left with the vulgar man and his men, some of them started to ask around. Not long after, the inside story of Lung Roashua and the others checking out of their rooms had spread throughout the imperial city. In fact, there were even signs that it was spreading throughout the entire immortal realm. Of course, this was something to be discussed later on. Furthermore, it was definitely the result of Lung Roashua and the others' unintentional actions. Lung Roashua and the rest were brought to the Divine Master's residence by the lecherous man. They stood outside the Divine Master's residence and looked at the tall buildings that had been rebuilt. She could not help but sigh with emotion. The Divine Master's residence was so efficient. To be able to build the God Lord's manor that Song had destroyed so quickly, it must have cost a lot of money, manpower, and resources. Song, who knew what Lung Roashua was thinking, pouted in disdain and transmitted his voice to Lung Roashua. That woman is rich. Moreover, she was now a Divine Master. Even if she didn't spend a single cent, this house would be built. However, since I could destroy her house once, I could destroy it again. Hee. After saying that, Song Huan laughed evilly. Hearing this, Lung Roashua's face was filled with black lines. She couldn't help but sympathize with Ripple Mist. What a pitiful fellow. Why was she targeted by Azure? However, she liked this idea. Lung Roashua and Song conversed in the dark. From time to time, their faces would reveal an expression of surprise. The wretched-looking man took all of this as her envy when she first saw the God Lord's estate. Immediately, his face was filled with pride. Oomph. A country bumpkin who had never seen the world. Today, he'll let you experience the magnificence of the Divine Master's residence. The wretched-looking man grinned. All right, he'll wait and see. When Lung Ruoxue heard this, she smiled calmly. However, she couldn't help but wonder if this fellow could really bring them into the Divine Master's residence. Even the guy called Huang Shou didn't have this ability last time. After all, that guy's family elder was one of the 3 reverent gods of the Divine Master's estate. However, Lung Ruoxue's question was answered very quickly. The vulgar man swaggered through the gates of the Divine Master's estate with them, and the guards at the gates did not stop him. Immediately, she had a new understanding of the status of the chief butler of the Divine Master's estate. It seemed that in the Divine Master's residence, the chief steward status was obviously above the 3 hierarch. In reality, Lung Ruoxue's guess wasn't completely accurate. The chief butler's position in the Divine Master's residence was definitely not on par with the 3 reverent gods, but he was someone close to the Divine Master and had some say in front of the Divine Master. Hence, whether it was the 3 reverent gods, the servants, or the guards in the residence, they all had to give him some face. Otherwise, if he was unhappy and tried to make things difficult for someone in front of the Divine Master, that person would be in trouble. It was also because of this that the chief butler had always been able to do whatever he wanted in the Divine Master's estate. Chapter 21:11. You're very interested in me. 3. As the head butler's favorite junior, the vulgar man naturally took advantage of his superior's power and was insufferably arrogant. It was also because he had the support of the head butler that he dared to bring Lung Ruoxue and the rest into the Divine Master's residence. However, the lecherous-looking man still had some apprehensions. Hence, he immediately ordered his men to bring Lung Ruoxue and the others into his residence as his new subordinates. When he arrived at his own place, the wretched-looking man became even more smug. After arranging for Lung Ruoxue, the demon, Uncle Long, Ao Jie, and Bing Yao to stay together, he brought the master of the Ning family away alone. Upon seeing this, everyone understood that he had taken a fancy to the master of the Ning family. Uncle Long and the others heaved a sigh of relief, but Lung Ruoxue's expression was a little conflicted. Of course, she wasn't afraid that her godfather would be taken advantage of, but she was afraid that godfather wouldn't be able to control his emotions and would beat someone up. I hope godfather can hold on. Shui, why are we being taken into the Divine Master's residence as soon as we come to the Imperial City? Uncle Long's beautiful face was filled with bewilderment and puzzlement. The way he looked at Lung Ruoxue was also filled with mockery. Seeing this, Lung Ruoxue smiled helplessly and said, I don't know. I think we're at odds with the Divine Master's estate. But then again, this is the second time we've been brought into the Divine Master's estate. I hope ITLL be smooth sailing this time. I will. We must have confidence in ourselves. Look, we're so lucky. Someone took the initiative to bring us into the Divine Master's estate as soon as we arrived at the Imperial City. This saved us a lot of trouble. Uncle Long joked. That's true. However, I'm a little worried about Godfather. I wonder how he is doing. Lung Ruoxue asked worriedly. Don't worry about that little guy. I think he's having a good time. Uncle Long guessed. It had to be said that Uncle Long was right. At this time, the master of the Ning family was indeed very happy. After he was taken away by the perverted man did not arrange a room for him, but directly brought him into his own room. As soon as he entered the room, the wretched man revealed his lust and wanted to force himself on the master of the Ning family. However, how could the master of the Ning family let him succeed? When a vulgar man pounced at him, he kicked him to the ground with a roundhouse kick. Then, the vulgar man's pig-like howl could be heard. In the room, the master of the Ning family stepped on the vulgar man's back with great momentum. He looked down at the vulgar man with a trace of killing intent in his eyes and asked coldly, You're very interested in me? Yep, a beauty. As long as you follow me, I promise to let you live a good life. The vulgar man was in so much pain that he kept grinning, but when he heard Master Ning's words, he still subconsciously replied, Hee, I don't want to eat anything nice or drink anything spicy. I just want to torture you, okay? Although it was a question, the words that came out of the Ning family's master's mouth were unusually certain. Then he grabbed the long black whip hanging on the wretched man's waist and swung it a few times in the air. The sound of the whip came in the air. The long whip immediately hit the vulgar man's body. Suddenly, the howling became even louder, accompanied by a series of light moans. Hearing this, the Ning family's master frowned and whipped even harder. This guy was asking for a beating. In the beginning, the vulgar man only felt the burning pain of the whip hitting his body, but following that, he felt a pleasure that he had never felt before, slowly surging up from his limbs and bones. The more force the whip used, the stronger the feeling became. Therefore, after the initial pain, he became excited. Arg, comfortable, harder, use more strength. The vulgar man pleaded. At this moment, his screams were more of moans. This kind of treatment was even more novel to him. However, hearing him say this, Master Ning's face became uglier. He didn't expect this guy to be a masochist. His whipping had made a certain man even more excited. This fact made him extremely depressed. After a few more slaps, the master of the Ning family put down the whip in his hand and found a chair to sit down, no longer paying attention to the perverted man who was in a frenzy. As the pleasure on the vulgar man's body disappeared, the pain intensified, and he continued to plead, "Don't stop. Don't stop. Continue hitting me. Hurry up and hit me. Beauty, I'm begging you." The master of the Ning family was speechless. After living for so many years, he had only heard of this kind of person. He didn't expect to see it with his own eyes today. He was also the executor. But after knowing that the vulgar man liked to be abused, he naturally didn't want to let that guy succeed. So he ignored the vulgar man's plea. Seeing that the master of the Ning family didn't make a move, the wretched man's begging became louder and louder, and finally evolved into a painful cry, which was really terrifying. The servants in the courtyard who heard the sound all consciously hid far away, afraid of being affected. Even the servants who had intended to break into the room to save their master dispelled the idea after hearing their master's voice begging for abuse. "What are you guys hiding here for?" Suddenly, an angry shout rang out in the ears of the attendants. The attendants were startled and looked at the owner of the voice. They stuttered, "Head butler, why you're here? I'm asking you why you're hiding here." Seeing the obvious panic on the attendants' faces, the head butler became suspicious. And nothing. The attendants' hearts trembled, and they were still stammering. When the chief steward saw them like this, he couldn't help but feel angry. Bang! With a single kick, he sent the servant closest to him to the ground. After that, the head butler shouted in an imposing manner, "You better tell me the truth." "Head butler, it's the young master. The young master is in the room. We're afraid of disturbing him." An attendant hurriedly said with a look of fear, and his words received the response of all the attendants present. "What is he doing?" The head butler glared at him and questioned him. However, before the attendant could answer, he faintly heard a soft groan from one of the rooms, followed by intermittent sobs. His face instantly darkened. This unfilial son actually dared to cause trouble in the Divine Master's estate. How many times had he told that little bastard that he could do whatever he wanted outside, but he was not allowed to do such a thing in the Divine Master's estate? Unexpectedly, that bastard actually turned a deaf ear to my words. It's really preposterous. The head butler, who was burning with anger, strode straight to the vulgar man's room and kicked the door open, shouting, "Little bastard, why aren't you stopping?" But then he was dumbfounded. Fuck, what was this situation? Why was it that his disappointing descendant was lying on the ground with his clothes torn and his body covered in wounds, while the woman who was supposed to be pressed down was sitting on the chair, admiring a certain man's self-comfort? Chapter 21:12. You're very interested in me? 4. The scene in front of him made the chief steward of the Divine Lord's estate, who had a bright future ahead of him, feel his blood rushing to his head. His head buzzed and stars appeared in front of his eyes. His body trembled with anger. His face turned from black to white and then back to black. The head butler's chest heaved up and down in anger. After he calmed down a little, he roared in anger, "Little bastard, why aren't you stopping?" As he spoke, He rushed to the front of the vulgar man and gave him a few tight slaps. Pop, pop. A few big slaps caused the vulgar man, who was originally immersed in his fantasy, to immediately wake up. However, he shouted out of reflex, "Damn it! Which bastard dared to hit me? You're really tired of living. It was your old man who hit him." The head butler was so angry that he felt dizzy. Then, a few loud slaps landed on the face of the vulgar man. The master of the Ning family looked at this scene coldly from the side, and he felt quite satisfied. At this time, the vulgar man was completely awake from the beating. When he saw that the one who hit him was his own old ancestor, he instantly became listless. Old ancestor. The wretched-looking man did not dare to look at his elder's face. He was so scared that his little heart was trembling nonstop, and his voice was as soft as a mosquito. "You useless thing, they'll just beat you to death." The head butler's face was full of disappointment. He raised his hand and wanted to continue hitting, but when he saw the wretched man's frightened eyes, he couldn't wave his hand. He had no choice but to transfer his anger to the master of the Ning family. "Oomph. Where did this bitch come from? Hurry up and kneel down." The head butler glanced at the master of the Ning family with contempt, snorted coldly, and said in an imposing manner, "Damn it, his own descendant had done such an embarrassing thing, but this woman was just watching from the side. This matter was really intolerable." However, the master of the Ning family was not afraid of him. Gently raising his eyes, he carefully sized up the little old man in front of him, who was burning with anger. The master of the Ning family lightly spat out 3 words. On what basis? These 3 words almost made the chief butler, who was in charge of the divine master's estate, vomit blood. He had been the chief butler for so long, but this was the first time he had heard someone ask him, why? Why? What else could he do? Of course, it was because he was the chief steward of the divine master's estate. The chief steward of the divine master's estate took a few deep breaths to calm himself down. Then, he suppressed his anger and said coldly, "Just because I'm the chief steward of the divine master's estate, and you're just a woman of unknown origin, what's wrong with the head butler?" Could the head butler be unreasonable to guests? By the way, I'm not someone with an unknown background. I'm a guest invited by your descendant. Master Ning replied with a smile. "Oomph. What kind of guest are you?" The head butler's face was full of disdain. This woman was just a woman that his descendants had taken a fancy to and captured. Did she really think that he didn't know? Then I was invited back by your descendants. What do you think? The master of the Ning family smiled and turned his eyes to the wretched-looking man. When a vulgar man saw the Ning family head's gentle gaze, he couldn't help but nod. Seeing this scene, the head butler wanted to swallow the vulgar man's heart. This damn thing, can it not be so lecherous? Didn't he know that lust was a double-edged sword? He shouldn't die for a woman without even knowing how he died. The head butler's heart was filled with resentment. He glared at the vulgar man with a fierce gaze that seemed to pierce through his body. Unfortunately, the vulgar man's mind was all on the Ning family master, so he naturally ignored the head butler's attitude. When the master of the Ning family saw this scene, his smile became more and more brilliant, and his mood was naturally very good. However, even though he was in a good mood, the chief butler's face was getting uglier and uglier. Seeing this, the master of the Ning family consciously walked to the side of the head butler, patted his shoulder to comfort him, and sympathetically said, "Calm down. Who asked you to have such a disappointing descendant? Of course, if you could be ruthless enough to hand him over to me, I guarantee that I can train him to be obedient and make him turn over a new leaf. How about it? Do you want to try?" What? The head butler was puzzled. What did this woman mean? She wanted him to hand her over? He even wanted to help him train? What was she up to? His heart was in a state of confusion, bewildered by the master of the Ning family. He's basically a piece of trash in this state. Don't you want a descendant that you can be proud of? So, handing him over to me is the best choice you can make. The master of the Ning family pointed at the vulgar man. Is that so? The head butler was a little dizzy from the Ning family's master's words, and actually seriously considered the feasibility of this matter. In the end, he hardened his heart, but still asked with some worry, "Who are you?" What's his purpose? I'm a good person. I don't have any purpose. The master of the Ning family replied with a slight grievance. Hearing this answer, the head butler's mouth twitched. He decided to ignore the other party's nonsense and made up his mind. If you can really teach my descendant well, then I won't pursue your rudeness to me just now. Rude? Did he? The master of the Ning family didn't understand. When had he been rude? However, he wouldn't argue with the head butler over such a small matter. So he nodded and said, "Don't worry, head butler. I won't disappoint you." When the head butler heard this, he nodded in satisfaction and said, "Then I'll hand him over to you." After that, the head butler patted his butt and left. After the head butler left, the master of the Ning family became a little uneasy when he saw that he had answered his purpose so easily. He glanced at the wretched man and couldn't help but secretly complain. This head butler's nerves are really thick. He had actually handed her over to him. In fact, it wasn't that the head butler was careless, but that he was too confident in the power of the Divine Master's estate and his own status. He was sure that no one would dare to mess with him, so he naturally didn't think about investigating the origin of the master of the Ning family. Even if he just asked casually and didn't get anything, he still agreed to hand the person over to the master. Moreover, another important reason was that his descendant was really too disappointing. He hated that he could not live up to his expectations, but he could not bear to give up, so he could only try everything he could. If someone could really teach this descendant well, it might not be a bad thing. Moreover, no one knew better than him about his descendant's lecherous habits. Seeing that his descendant seemed to be quite obedient, he decided to give it a try. However, he was too confident and did not worry about the safety of his descendants. It was also because of this that the wretched man's days of suffering arrived. A few days later, "Ow!" The voice rang out in the courtyard, as usual. Chapter 21:13. You're very interested in me? 5. When the servants who were passing by heard this terrifying sound, they hurriedly ran away with large steps, as if they were running for their lives. Everyone knew that this was a certain fierce woman disciplining their little master. However, after receiving the head butler's greeting, they naturally adopted an attitude of ignoring it. However, this cry was really too terrifying. They were afraid. For a time, the courtyard was in chaos. In the room, Lung Ruoxue and the others were also speechless. Ever since their godfather returned with the wretched man a few days ago and threw him into the room next door, the noise had never stopped. They didn't know how their godfather dealt with the unlucky guy, but he actually made him scream so miserably, as if someone had burst his flower. No, to be precise, it was even worse than that. At this moment, the master of the Ning family, who was obviously in a good mood, pushed the door open and entered. Seeing his expression, Lung Ruoxue knew that Godfather was having a great time. However, Godfather didn't allow them to watch, so they didn't know what Godfather had done to that fellow. "Little guy, you're in a good mood," Uncle Long said with a smile. Of course, the master of the Ning family was proud. "Then, did you manage to get any important information?" Uncle Long asked in a low voice. "I really don't have any. Although that guy lives in the God Lord's estate, he's only relying on his relationship with the head butler. He basically doesn't know anything about himself." The master of the Ning family sighed. Over the past few days, although they had moved into the Divine Master's estate, they did not act rashly. Furthermore, as guests invited into the Divine Master's estate by the vulgar man, it was not appropriate for them to walk around the Divine Master's estate as they pleased. More importantly, their current area of activity could only be in this small courtyard. If they wanted to go out, the guards at the door would not allow them to. Therefore, they knew nothing about the God Lord's estate. Since we can't get anything from him, we can only think of a way ourselves. Uncle Long thought for a while and said, "You mean we should go out and look for it ourselves?" The master of the Ning family asked, raising an eyebrow. But only me, Shue, and that brat Yi will go out. You guys have to stay here and cover for us." Uncle Long said, "Why can't I go out with Shue, and the others, and you guys cover for us?" Hearing Uncle Long say this, the master of the Ning family was not convinced. He also wanted to go out with Shui. You have to stay behind and teach that unlucky fellow a lesson, don't you? If you leave, you'll be too big a target. Uncle Long said matter-of-factly. All right. The master of the Ning family had nothing to say about this reason, and the others had no doubts about Uncle Long's arrangement. Following that, Uncle Long gave Lung Ruoxue a look. Lung Ruoxue nodded her head lightly. Then, with a thought, she brought Uncle Long and the evildoer into the bangle and left the room with Green Vessel. After they left, the master of the Ning family immediately became listless, and Tsang also looked listless. Aogs saw this and pouted helplessly. He gave Bing Yao a look, and the two of them stood up and left the room, leaving the master of the Ning family and Tsang, who also felt abandoned, staring at each other. In the bracelet, Lung Ruoxue and the other two sat in the garden and chatted. Their destination was naturally Xian Yi's residence. Originally, they didn't want to disturb Xian Yi this time, but it seemed like they still had to ask him for information. At this moment, Qing Ju's voice was heard. Sister, we've arrived at Xian Yi's residence. However, he has a guest now, so it's not appropriate for us to show ourselves. Oh, then listen to the corner of the wall. Lung Ruoxue ordered. Upon hearing this, Uncle Long's face darkened. Then, he calmly listened to the conversation through the light screen. After a long time, the three of them appeared in Xian Yi's study. Xian Yi, who had just sent Huang Wei off, saw the three people who had suddenly appeared in his study. He immediately asked vigilantly, "Who are you people?" "Old man, it's me." Uncle Long quickly said, "Who are you?" Looking at the stunning beauty in front of him, Xian Yi was very sure that he didn't recognize her. "I'm Uncle Long." Uncle Long said awkwardly. He didn't want to find Xian Yi before because he didn't want his new image to be seen by his acquaintances. It was too embarrassing, right? Sure enough, when Xian Yi heard this, he immediately widened his eyes in disbelief. Then, he looked at the woman who claimed to be Uncle Long with suspicion. However, he couldn't tell that the person in front of him had any relationship with Uncle Long. However, since the other party called himself Uncle Long, he had to treat him with caution. After making up his words, Xian Yi pretended to be calm and asked, "Did Uncle Long ask you to come and find me?" He directly ignored the words, "I'm Uncle Long." "No, I said I'm Uncle Long." Uncle Long rolled his eyes. He was extremely helpless against Xian Yi's self-deception. "What evidence do you have?" Xian Yi asked cautiously. "Evidence?" Uncle Long thought for a moment, then started to talk about what he knew about Xian Yi. He started from when Xian Yi stopped wetting the bed and when he stopped drinking milk. When Xian Yi heard this, his expression changed, and he quickly covered Uncle Long's mouth. But even so, he couldn't stop Uncle Long from continuing. Chapter 2114. Saving a Life. 1. Xian Yi's face darkened, and the flames of anger in his eyes grew more and more. Uncle Long, who was slow to react, only reacted after a long time. He asked with a serious expression, "Old man, am I right?" Upon hearing this, Lung Ruoxue and the evildoer looked at each other. Then, the two of them suppressed their laughter and lowered their heads to prevent Xian Yi from being too embarrassed. However, their slightly trembling shoulders still caused Xian Yi's anger to rise. Xian Yi gritted his teeth and glared at Uncle Long. His eyes were spitting fire as he said fiercely, "You're right. Do you believe that I'm Uncle Long?" Uncle Long said worriedly, "I believe you." Xian Yi growled in anger. Then, he looked at Uncle Long with curiosity and asked, "Why did you change your gender? Could it be that it's a trend in the divine realm now?" "Popular, my ass. It's all this girl's doing." Uncle Long pointed at Lung Ruoxue and said in an unpleasant tone, Who is this girl?" "It can't be Lung Ruoxue." Xian Yi guessed. "It's her." Uncle Long nodded. "Why are you guys here so quickly?" Seeing that he had guessed correctly, Xian Yi continued to ask. These guys were definitely up to no good. He didn't know what they were interested in this time. "We're here to save someone." Lung Ruoxue laughed. "Save people? Has Bingio's injuries not healed?" When Xian Yi heard this, he could not help but ask worriedly. "Senior brother's injuries have healed. We're here to save second senior brother. Lung Ruoxue explained. What's the matter? Have you found master? Yes, other disciple. Xian Yi said with a face full of pleasant surprise. This was really good news. He was in a great mood after the gloominess of his embarrassing matter was swept away. Senior brother Bing Yao said that second senior brother was locked up by the mist, so we had no choice but to come here again. Lung Ruoxue said helplessly. Since they knew where second senior brother was, even if this was a dragon's pool or a tiger's den, they had to come over now. Why is everything that you're doing so difficult? Hearing this, Xian Yi was speechless. Was the Divine Master's estate that easy to come to? After they had turned the God Lord's estate upside down, the God Lord was still angry. They, the unlucky ones, had yet to recover from the previous incident. Moreover, it had not been long since the last incident. They did not expect them to make a comeback so soon. Moreover, he knew that since Lung Ruoxue and the others had come to find him again, they must have wanted to find out some information or needed his help. However, ever since the incident last time, Fog River was somewhat dissatisfied with the people in the Divine Lord's estate. Therefore, she had been giving them the cold shoulder and did not give them any orders. As a result, he knew very little about the Divine Lord. Therefore, he did not know if he could help them, and was afraid that they would be discovered by Fog River. After all, Wu Chun had been looking for the guy who had broken into the God Lord's estate. If Wu Chun found out that the Totoro who had destroyed the God Lord estate was with them, he thought that Wu Chun would probably go crazy with anger. Thinking of this, he continued, You've come at the wrong time. Since the last incident in the Divine Master's estate, Wu Chun has strengthened the security of the Divine Master's estate. Her own divine sense has also been monitoring every move in the Divine Master's estate all day long. Therefore, now is not a good time to save people. I don't recommend you to act now, but the girl has already made up her mind. She must save her senior brother. So, we can only risk our lives to accompany her. Uncle Long said helplessly, Did you let her come despite knowing the danger? This is nonsense. When Xian Yi heard this, he growled angrily. What else can we do? However, don't worry too much. With our strength, it's not impossible for us to save her safely. Uncle Long didn't want Xian Yi to boost other people's morale and destroy his own. Therefore, he was full of confidence when he said this. What do you know? The last time you were able to succeed was because of Song's help and because of Fog's injury. But now Fog's injury has recovered. By the way, have you come? If it's with you, then the possibility of saving him will be higher. As Xian Yi spoke, he thought of that valiant Totoro. However, he knew that Song wasn't that easy to order around. Even if he was willing to help once, he might not help a second time. Hence, he didn't think highly of Lung Ruoxue and the others. Senior Song is also here, but he won't help us save people. So, we can only rely on ourselves to save Qing Yang. Uncle Long said honestly, And you still dare to come? Aren't you guys here to die? If you're discovered by Rye Mice, you'll be dead. Uncle Long's truth made Xian Yi a little anxious. He was still counting on this girl to avenge Master Yu. If this girl died before she had fully grown up, he would feel the pain. As he thought of this, his gaze could not help but turn to Lung Ruoxue. His face was still filled with worry. When Lung Ruoxue saw this, she smiled helplessly and said, Uncle Xian, calm down. I believe that we can definitely save second senior brother. You believe that? Do you think you can do this just because you believe in it? Xian Yi was very angry, but he couldn't do anything to Lung Ruoxue, especially when he saw the man beside Lung Ruoxue looking at her with a pampering expression. He felt even more troubled. With such a fiancé who doted on his wife without limit, it was no wonder this girl was so bold. AI, he really didn't know what to say. The demon who sensed Xian Yi's thoughts glanced at him and said indifferently, With me here, Shui can do whatever she wants. Even if she wants to destroy the Divine Master's estate, I will help her. I won't let her life be in danger. Upon hearing this, Xian Yi revealed an expression of as expected. Then he sighed. At this moment, Uncle Long patted Xian Yi's shoulder and comforted him. Since you know that things have already come to this, why bother stopping it? Do you think we want save her just because you don't want us to? We're only looking for you to understand the situation. So just tell us what we're asking. You don't need to worry about saving people. You're just comforting me. Or are you angry at me? Hearing Uncle Long's words, Xian Yi's anger did not subside. Instead, he became even more depressed. Of course I'm consoling you. All right, is Wu Cheng in the Divine Master's estate right now? Uncle Long suddenly asked. Here, didn't I tell you that ever since the incident at the God Lord's estate, Wu Yin has strengthened the security of the God Lord's estate? Now, he doesn't even trust us. Xian Yi said honestly. What are your plans? Or do you want to continue staying here? Uncle Long asked again. Of course I have to stay here. I've been here for so long and finally got to where I am today. If I leave just like this, wouldn't everything I've done before be in vain? Xian Yi said. He still wanted to stay here and be a spy, although he didn't know when he would be of use. He believed that day wouldn't be far away. Chapter 21:15. Saving a life, too. But didn't Wu Chen no longer trust you? Uncle Long was a little worried. If his old friend's identity was exposed, the consequences would be unimaginable. It's not that she doesn't trust me, but she doesn't trust anyone in the Divine Master's estate. Xian Yi corrected. All right, it's not that I don't trust you, but all of you don't trust me. But even so, do you think there's a need for you to stay here? Wu Chen is a lunatic. If she acts up one day and kills all of you, they'll have to collect your corpses. I don't want this to happen, so I suggest you leave as soon as possible. Uncle Long said very seriously. His words were definitely not an alarmist. With Wei Yan's nature, she might really do such a thing. Therefore, he was very worried about the safety of his old friend. I can't just leave like this, especially at a time like this. I have to stay here. Xian Yi said stubbornly. You're really... Uncle Long was so angry at Xian Yi's stubbornness that he didn't know what to say. You don't have to worry. I know what to do. Xian Yi promised. Then be careful. Don't die before we avenge Master Yu. Otherwise, I'm afraid we'll have to take revenge on you too. Uncle Long said in an unpleasant tone. You old whale, you actually cursed me. Xian Yi said angrily on purpose. He knew that Uncle Long was worried about him. However, he truly felt that it would be better for them if he stayed in the Divine Lord's estate. Moreover, he had been in the Divine Lord's estate for many years and his status was quite high. Naturally, he did not want to return empty-handed. Hearing this, Uncle Long only snorted coldly and turned his head awkwardly, no longer looking at Xian Yi. Seeing the two of them like this, Lung Ruoshu couldn't help but tease, Uncle Long, Uncle Xian, you two look like a couple who's having a fight. Upon hearing this, the two of them immediately jumped 10 meters away from each other. They glared at Lung Ruoshua in anger and growled in unison. Stinky girl, what nonsense are you spouting? I just think it looks like it. He didn't say it was true. Lung Ruoshua said with an aggrieved expression. With her stirring things up like this, the atmosphere instantly became much more harmonious. Uncle Xian, we're going into a space in the fog to save someone. When do you think it's best for us to act? Lung Ruoshua asked. Mai space? How could you enter her space? Even if we can enter, it's impossible to not alert her, right? Xian Yi asked worriedly. He had heard that the rhyme ice had its own space, but he wasn't sure what the rhyme ripple was used for. However, after hearing Lung Ruoxu's words, he could already guess that it was a prison created by the rhyme ice. We naturally have our own ways. So, Uncle Xian, please tell me when the Divine Lord's estate and rhyme ice's defenses are at their lowest. Of course, it would be even better if rhyme ice can leave the Divine Lord's estate for some matters. Lung Ruoxua said with a smile. Wu Chan won't leave the Divine Lord's estate so easily now. Moreover, her divine sense will also pay attention to the Divine Lord's estate's movements at all times. Therefore, it'll be very difficult for you to save her. Moreover, it's also very dangerous for you to enter someone else's space. The worry on Xian Yi's face deepened. However, when he saw Lung Ruoxu's confident look, he knew that he would not be able to persuade her. After thinking for a while, Xianyi said, In the morning, Wu Xian usually goes into the mountain to take in the fresh air. Only at that time will she not be in the God Lord's estate. However, you must know that once Wu Xian discovers the abnormality in the God Lord's estate, she can immediately teleport back. Thus, you don't have much time. Yes, I know. Lung Ruoxue nodded after hearing Xian Yi's words. They chatted for a while more before Lung Ruoxue left Xian Yi's study room with Uncle Long and the demon. When they returned to their residence, Lung Ruoxue told Master Ning and the others about what she had learned from Xian Yi. After Master Ning heard it, he couldn't help but ask, Shui, how do we enter the rhyme ice space? Senior brother, do you have any good ideas? Lung Ruoxue turned to look at Bing Yao after hearing what her godfather had to say. I went in with Wu Jing last time. This time, we only have two choices. Either we wait for the opportunity to sneak in with her, or we find a way to break her space. Bing Yao said after some thought. It's not possible to break through her space. The master of the Ning family said gloomily. Doesn't that mean that we can only wait for Wu Jie to go there, and then secretly follow her in? Ao, Jie said. Shui, don't keep us in suspense. If you have any good ideas, tell us quickly. After listening to Master Ning and Ao Jie's words, Uncle Long looked at Lung Ruoxue and said helplessly. He knew that Shui would not ask when Xuanyi Wumin would not be in the Divine Master's residence for no reason. Since she had asked, she must have a good idea. Hearing Uncle Long's words, Lung Ruoxue gave a faint smile before saying, There's a way, but I don't know if it'll work. What is it? When Uncle Long and the rest heard this, they stared at Lung Ruoxue expectantly and asked, I have a little beast. It's good at transmigrating. I can let it try. Lung Ruoxue explained. The little beastie she was referring to was naturally Xiao Budian. In reality, ever since she left the Yin residence, she had completely forgotten about Xiao Budian. She had no idea what Xiao Budian had been up to during this period of time. It was Qing Ju who reminded her and told her to let Xiao Budian try to see if he could bring them through the foggy space. Initially, she wanted to let Qing Ju do this. After all, Qing Ju had the ability to travel. However, Qing Ju told her that he could not travel through other people's private spaces. The little guy was different from him. That little fellow did not have as many restrictions as he did. He could really go wherever he wanted to. Furthermore, even though Reverent God-level cultivators could tear space apart, this space did not include other people's personal space. Thus, if Xiao Budian had this ability, then there was no one more suitable than him. As she thought about this, Lung Ruoxue shifted Xiao Budian out of the bracelet. Xiao Budian, who had been moved out, was currently curled up into a ball and sleeping soundly. There was even a trace of suspicious liquid flowing out from the corner of his mouth. Seeing him in this state, Lung Ruoxue was speechless. I haven't seen this little fellow for so long. Why hasn't it improved at all? Is this a fox? The moment the little guy came out, Uncle Long was immediately attracted to him. After carefully observing him for a long time, Uncle Long asked in disbelief. As far as he knew, civet cats had long been exterminated in the divine world. However, there was one in front of him all of a sudden. Moreover, he had been in the bracelet for quite a long time, but he had not discovered it. He had to admit that this little fellow's hiding skills were really good. Yes, I am. This little fellow is very naughty and always causes trouble for me. Therefore, Qing Ju has been keeping an eye on it. Lung Ruoxue said with a faint smile as she saw through Uncle Long's thoughts. Chapter 21:16, Saving a Life 3, I see. Uncle Long nodded. Then he extended a finger and poked the little guy's fluffy body. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. This little guy's food is not bad. He ate until he was fat. At this time, the little guy was woken up by Uncle Long. He unwillingly opened his drowsy eyes and angrily bit Uncle Long's finger. Uncle Long's movements were also extremely fast. When he realized that the little guy had the intention to bite, he immediately retracted his hand. When the little guy saw this, he growled in a low voice and issued a warning of dissatisfaction. Yo, This little fellow's temper isn't small. Uncle Long saw Xiao Budian's fierce appearance and laughed. It's crazy. Uncle Long, ignore it. It'll be quiet soon. Lung Ruoxua glanced at Xiao Budian as she spoke in an indifferent tone. Hearing this, Xiao Budian looked at Lung Ruoxua with a wronged expression. Then, he ran over to her and rubbed against her, trying to please her. He raised his little head and said in a baby voice, Sister, you haven't talked to me for a long time. After she finished speaking, her eyes were filled with tears. That little appearance was really as pitiful as it could be. Big sister is too busy. When Lung Ruoxua heard this, she felt a little guilty. In reality, not only had she not paid attention to the little guy for a long time, she had completely forgotten about him. She even asked Qing Ju to look after him, causing this active little fellow to lose his freedom. Oh, then, sister's not busy now, right? Can you play with me now? The little guy said with a face full of anticipation. Ever since his relationship with his big sister became better, he had always been looking forward to his big sister being able to play with him for a while. However, this wish had never been realized. He'll play with you when I'm free, Lung Ruoxua promised. Then, she looked at Xiao Budian in embarrassment and said, Little guy, I need your help with something. What is it? Xiao Budian looked at Lung Ruoxua and asked, I need to save someone. I want you to take me through a space. It's a private space. Can you do that? Lung Ruoxua asked gently. No problem, he said. When the little guy heard this, he patted his chest with his little paw and promised. With the little guy's guarantee, everyone was very happy. Then everyone praised him, causing this little guy's proud tail to be raised to the sky. The next morning, with Bing Yao leading the way, Qing Ju brought them to their destination. The special space was set up by Wu Yin at the back mountain of the Divine Master's residence. As soon as they entered the mountain, Lung Ruoxua and the others saw a faint light source through the light screen. Needless to say, this was the entrance to the space. However, no one could enter this space except for Wu Ice or those who had been authorized by her. Lung Ruoxua pointed at the source of the light and said to Xiao Budian, Little one, that's the space we're going to. However, it's private property, so can you bring us in without alerting the master? Not alerting the master. He'll have to try. But, sister, even if I can do it without alerting the master of this space, you'll have to do it quickly. Otherwise, the master of this space will definitely notice. The little guy thought for a bit and reminded, Okay, how much time can you give me? Lung Ruoxua nodded and asked, 3 minutes at most. The little guy tilted his little head and said, 3 minutes should be enough. Lung Ruoxua thought for a moment and said, In that case, please send me out, sister. The little guy requested. All right, let Ling cast an invisibility spell on you. After Lung Ruoxua finished speaking, she gave Ling, who was already waiting by the side, a look. Ling understood her meaning and immediately cast an invisibility technique on Xiao Budian's body. After that, Lung Ruoxua moved Xiao Budian out of the bracelet. Xiao Budian took out his bangle and stood outside the light screen. He extended his little claws and poked at the light source. Then he nodded his head and green vessel transformed into dust and attached itself to his body. Immediately after, the little guy leaped into the air and plunged into the light source. Lung Ruoxua, who was in the bangle, could see through the light screen that everything in front of her was white. Following that, a few light sources flashed past, and Xiao Budian brought them down into a tunnel. Big sister, we're already in. After Xiao Budian steadied himself, he transmitted a message to Lung Ruoxua. Thank you, little one. Lung Ruoxua shifted Xiao Budian back into the bracelet and said to Bing Yao, Senior brother, please continue to lead the way. Yes. Bing Yao nodded and directed Qing Ju to walk straight ahead. After they reached the end, they took 2 turns and saw a door. He said, There it is. Qing Yang is locked up there. When he said this, Bing Yao was extremely excited. He could finally save his junior brother. Thinking of all the suffering his junior brother had gone through all these years, he felt as if his heart was being cut by a knife. Big sister, you only have 2 minutes. At this time, the little guy reminded. They had already spent a minute on this journey, So he was afraid that this guy in front of him would only care about being excited and forget to save them. Then wouldn't they have come in vain? Let's go out. Bing Yao glared at Xiao Buddy and before speaking to Lung Ruoxue. When Lung Ruoxue heard this, she nodded her head. Then she turned to Uncle Long and the rest. Uncle Long, the demon, senior brother, and I will go and save them. You guys stay here for the time being. Good. Be careful. Uncle Long warned. Yes. After Lung Ruoxue replied, she looked at her godfather, who was about to speak, and said, Godfather, it's equally important for all of you to stay inside. We just want to catch everyone off guard this time, so there's no need for too many people to go in. I know, you guys go in quickly. We have to hurry. The master of the Ning family suppressed his depression. Shui was almost like a worm in his stomach. He hadn't even opened his mouth, but what he wanted to say was blocked. Woo! However, at this time, there's really no need for too many people to get involved, so he could only do his thoughts of following her. With her godfather's words, Lung Ruoxue did not delay any further and left the bracelet with the demon and Bing Yao. After they left, Ao Jia looked at Uncle Long, who was also depressed, and sighed. Did we follow them for nothing this time? We have nothing to do with this. How can we not be involved? The most important thing is to participate, understand? Uncle Long rolled his eyes at Ao Jia and said indifferently, That's right. We followed Shui here because we were afraid that she might not have enough manpower. Since they don't need us now, we'll just cheer them on. Why will we come here for nothing? The master of the Ning family would never admit that he had come for nothing. He believed that he would be of use in some way. After saying that, Uncle Long and Master Ningning sat on the chairs in front of the light screen tacitly and ignored Ao Jia. Ao Jia, who felt bored, also sat down and looked at the light screen nervously. At the same time, Lung Ruoxue and the other two had already sneaked into the room behind the door. As soon as they entered, they saw a person tied to dozens of stone pillars in the room. Those people were covered in wounds. Some were awake, some were unconscious. A man in black with his back facing them was holding a torture device against a man. After feeling something strange, the man in black turned around and shouted, Who is it? Come out! Because he saw the door that was originally closed suddenly open. When they heard this sound, Lung Ruoxue and the other two held their breaths. Then, the demon conjured a blade of light that was made of black divine power and flew towards the man in black. In an instant, the man in black's head was separated from his body and he was cut into two. He didn't even have the time to let out a cry of surprise before he died. Upon seeing this, Lung Ruoxue threw a wisp of fire at the corpse. In the blink of an eye, the corpse turned into ashes. Seeing this scene, the prisoners who were still conscious couldn't help but widen their eyes. Their faces were full of disbelief. Bing Yao couldn't help but sigh. These two guys, one killed the man, and the other destroyed the corpse. They worked together flawlessly. It was terrifying. However, even though he thought this, he did not delay the rescue. He ran to a stone pillar and cut the rope of the person who was tied up with a wind blade. Then, he rescued the person from the pillar. The person who was saved looked around warily. Although he felt that someone was helping him, he couldn't see anyone. This fact didn't make him feel happy because he didn't know if this was the woman's doing. Until he heard a familiar voice. Qing Yang, it's me. Seeing Qing Yang's guarded face, Bing Yao quickly whispered, You're my senior brother? Qing Yang's face was filled with disbelief and even more excitement because he still remembered that Wu Yin had told him that his senior brother was seriously injured and would soon become her captive. Although he did not completely believe Wu Yan's words, this matter had always been on his mind. However, now that he heard his senior brother's voice, he could finally be at ease. It turned out that Wu Chun had lied to him. Yes, Qing Yang, we're here to save you, Bing Yao quickly said. You guys? Hearing this, Qing Yang was a little bewildered. However, before he had the chance to understand the situation, he heard a woman's voice. Senior brother, now is not the time to reminisce. Hurry up and save the others. Lung Ruoxue instructed. This was also Qing Ju's request. She had even brought out the bracelets for Uncle Long and the others to help. Yes, senior brother, quickly save them. Hearing the woman's words, Qing Yang quickly said. He was so happy that he almost forgot about the others. He really shouldn't have. At the thought of this, Qing Yang quickly ran to the pillar closest to him and rescued the people tied up on it. Uncle Long and the others used their divine power to form a light blade to cut the rope from a distance and save the people on the pillar. Lung Ruoxue then kept them into her bracelet. Chapter 21:17. Injured 1. The rescue operation went very smoothly. However, just as Lung Ruoxue was in the process of moving everyone into the bracelet, she suddenly felt an intense pressure coming towards her. She immediately felt a sharp pain in her head. Following that, she heard an angry roar from afar. "You're looking for death." Instantly, her heart trembled. Then, with a change of mind, she quickly brought everyone into the bracelet. The second they entered the bracelet, a red shadow appeared in the room. Slowly, the shadow solidified. Then, a beautiful woman in red with flames of anger burning on her body appeared in the room. This beautiful woman was Wu Xian. Looking at the empty room, Wu Long's beautiful face showed shock and anger. Damn it! Then, with a wave of her long sleeve, everything in the room turned to ashes. After venting her anger, the anger in her heart did not subside. Instead, it accumulated and her face turned from white to black. Her body was cold, and there were countless ice shards around her. The flame in her beautiful eyes instantly turned into a monstrous fire. Damn it! Who did this? Who saved her? Rhyme was filled with anger and hatred. Her anger caused her originally beautiful face to become somewhat distorted. Yes, she hated it. She was furious. She didn't expect that someone would actually dare to save people under her eyes. They really didn't want to live. Moreover, she had rushed back quickly enough, so she believed that the audacious people must still be here, but she did not know where they were hiding. Thinking of this, she closed her eyes and carefully sensed everything here. In the next second, Ripple opened her pair of astute eyes, and a cold light flashed in them. He actually didn't feel anything? How was this possible? This was her own territory. She had created it. She was the owner of this place. Everything here should be under her control. But now, her feelings were telling her that everything was normal here. This was impossible. Wu Jing didn't believe that her judgment could be wrong. Therefore, she guessed that the other party must have used some special means, which was why she couldn't detect it. But what was it? In the entire divine realm, who would have the ability to make him not detect any traces? This was really too unusual. All this while, she had always thought that the divine world was within her grasp. However, now, something that she could not grasp had happened in the divine world. She did not even have any clues about it. How could she do this? This made her feel that her authority had been challenged. Oof. She would never allow such a thing to happen. However, it wouldn't be that easy to immediately find the people who had trespassed her territory. Moreover, she was very certain that those rascals were still here. She just didn't know what method they had used to avoid her spiritual awareness search. But it was impossible for them to hide here for a lifetime. She was sure that these people would eventually give themselves away. With this thought in mind, she was not so angry and anxious. Then, with a change of mind, she disappeared from the spot. As soon as she left, Uncle Long and the others, who were hiding in their bracelets, heaved a sigh of relief. That woman was finally gone. However, she came so quickly. Fortunately, Shui had the universal bracelet. Otherwise, they would have become that woman's captives. Shui, what should we do now? Uncle Long said worriedly. Although Wu Xian had left, Uncle Long believed that she would definitely keep a close eye on this place. In fact, she didn't need to keep a close eye on them at all, because this was her territory. It wouldn't be easy for them to leave this place without being discovered. However, after he asked this, he realized that Lung Ruoxue did not give any response. He thought that Shui was also trying to find out about this matter. However, after waiting for a while, he realized that Lung Ruoxue still had no reaction. He quickly turned around and realized that Shui-er's face was frighteningly pale. Shui-er. In the next second, Uncle Long saw Lung Ruoxu's body limply fall to the ground. He hurriedly reached out to catch her and called out Shui Er's name in a panic. The evildoer, who heard that something was wrong with Uncle Long's voice, immediately teleported to Lung Ruoxu's side and took her from Uncle Long's hands. Then, he checked on Lung Ruoxu's condition before his expression changed drastically. Shui is injured. This fact made the demon blame himself. Why didn't he notice Shui Er's abnormality? He was so regretful that he couldn't protect Shui in time. When Uncle Long heard this, his face turned ugly. How is this possible? Shui was fine before. How did she suddenly get injured? In fact, they cannot be blamed for not realizing it in time. Even Lung Ruoxu did not realize that she was injured, and the demon had been arranged by her to help Bing Yao by giving pills to those who were saved. Therefore, it was very normal that no one realized it in time. However, the evildoer was not willing to think that way. He felt that he was too careless and did not protect Shui well. Hence, he was deeply in self-blame and could not extricate himself. For a moment, the air in the bangle seemed to have frozen, and the air pressure dropped to freezing point. Looking at the invisible dark qi emanating from the evildoer's body, the calm master of the Ning family sighed and quickly took out a healing pill for Shui to consume. However, Shui did not wake up as he had expected, which made him deeply worried. At this moment, Qingju, who had arranged a place for the people who were saved, appeared beside Lung Ruoxu. When he saw Lung Ruoxu, who was being held tightly in the arms of the demon, Qingju was so worried that his little body was trembling slightly. Sister. Qingju squatted down and closed his eyes to feel the condition of Lung Ruoxu's body. When he opened his eyes again, his eyes were filled with tears. His divine sense was damaged. He didn't expect his sister to be so seriously injured. At that time, he only cared about the people who were saved and neglected his sister. Moreover, he didn't expect his sister to be injured. Now that he thought about it, it should be that before Wu Yan arrived, she had launched a spiritual sense attack on his sister. With his sister's current strength, no matter how powerful her spiritual sense was, she couldn't resist it at all. In addition, this was Wu Yan's territory, so Wu Yan's attack was more convenient and silent. Sister. Qingju's tears fell silently. His heart tightened as he looked at Uncle Long and the others. He became more and more worried. Furthermore, Shui had yet to wake up after taking a supreme-grade healing pill. This fact made them very uneasy. Little brat Yi, you should carry Shui into the purple bamboo house first. Uncle Long couldn't help but remind Yi Chun when he saw him in a daze. However, Yi Chun was so immersed in self-blame that he did not give him any response. Seeing this, Uncle Long had to do it himself. Chapter 21:18. Injured, too. However, the demon's reaction was so fast that he threw Uncle Long far away. Then, he glared at Uncle Long with bloodshot eyes and roared, "What are you doing? Shui is mine. No one is allowed to snatch it. Little brat Yi, I don't want to snatch Shui. I just want you to carry her into the purple bamboo house. You can't just let her stay outside like this. She's still injured." Uncle Long sighed helplessly and reminded him. Hearing this, the evildoer's emotions calmed down a little, but the hostility on his body grew heavier. Uncle Long and the others were so frightened that they couldn't help but feel shaken and kept quiet out of fear. However, when they saw the demon carefully carrying Lung Ruoxu into the purple bamboo house, they heaved a sigh of relief. However, when they saw the demon's appearance, they became even more worried. Bang! The door of the purple bamboo house was slammed shut. Uncle Long, the master of the Ning family, and Ao Jie looked at each other, then shook their heads and sighed at the same time. Although they were also worried about Shui, it was obvious that the evildoer did not want them to disturb her. So, they had to stay outside. Sister. At this moment, Qingju, whose face was covered in tears, finally reacted. He was about to enter the purple bamboo house to accompany his sister when Uncle Long hugged him. "Release me. I want to accompany Big Sister." Ju roared in anger. Little guy, you can't go in. Let them be alone for a while. Uncle Long comforted Ju, who was kicking him. On what basis? I also want to accompany Big Sister. Upon hearing this, Ju could not calm down. Instead, he became even fiercer. He also wanted to be with his sister. Only by being with his sister would he feel at ease. Otherwise, he had no other way. Sob, sister. Ju cried out painfully in his heart. Self-blame made him feel very uneasy. He knew that his sister's situation was very critical at this time, so he wanted to stay by her side. His sister also needed him. However, these people did not allow him to enter. Why was that devilish man the only one who could accompany her sister? Ju felt extremely unbalanced. Furthermore, this was his territory. As long as he wanted to enter, no one could stop him. With this thought in mind, Ju immediately disappeared from Uncle Long's arms. Looking at his empty arms, Uncle Long was helpless. He knew that the little fellow would not listen to him, but he did not think that the little fellow had the ability to be a third wheel. Sure enough, the next second, Uncle Long saw the door of the purple bamboo house being flung open. Then, an object was thrown out from inside. After drawing a beautiful arc in the air, the object fell into the pool under the waterfall with a bang. He didn't need to look to know that it was green vessel. Then they saw a wet little doll climb out of the water and disappear in front of them. Then another object was thrown out of the purple bamboo house. This time, the object landed on the ground freely. Uncle Long and the other two saw this and their hearts tightened. They could not help but worry for Ju. It would not hurt if it fell into the water, but how painful would it be if it fell on the ground? Oh, artifact spirits would also feel pain, right? Just as they had expected, Ju was already badly battered from the fall. However, he was still unyielding and persevered in his desire to continue entering the purple bamboo house to accompany Lung Ruoxue. This cycle repeated again and again, but Green Vessel still did not succeed. Uncle Long and the others went from being worried at first to becoming numb. In the end, they could only helplessly sit on the stone chairs closest to the purple bamboo house and wait for news. They were surrounded by countless beasts who were also worried about Lung Ruoxue, but not as bold as Ju. However, the deep worry in their eyes was the same. At this moment, Bing Yao, who had heard the news of Lung Ruoxue's injury, also came to the purple bamboo house. However, he did not dare to enter. Qingyang was with him. How is Junior sister? Qingyang couldn't help but ask softly. He saw that all the people and beasts present were looking in the direction of the purple bamboo house without saying a word. The atmosphere was frighteningly heavy. He was worried and scared. He was worried about the injuries of this junior sister that he had never met before. And the one he was afraid of was naturally Yichan, that guy who could explode at any time. He didn't dare to imagine if something really happened to junior sister. Would the mistress of the dark world destroy the entire divine realm in a rage? No, it should be the entire world. He had already heard from his senior brother about the Dark Lord's feelings for this junior sister. However, no one or beast was willing to answer his question. Baby and the other beasts who had followed Lung Ruoxue for the longest time were glaring at him with an unfriendly look as if they were looking at an enemy. Qin Yang's heart trembled when he saw this. He knew that he was taking his anger out on them. These little beasts blamed junior sister's injuries on him. Although he felt a little aggrieved, he knew that his junior sister had been injured because she had tried to save them. He could not deny this. Therefore, it was only natural for her to vent her anger on him. Therefore, not only did he not dare to show any dissatisfaction, he had to endure it. At this moment, a strong suction force appeared on Bing Yao and Qin Yang, and they were dragged into the purple bamboo house uncontrollably. As soon as they entered, the two of them saw the demon's back facing them. His eyes were glued to Lung Ruoxue, who was lying on the bed. The frighteningly cold aura from his body made them shiver uncontrollably. The cold temperature could freeze people at any time, and the entire purple bamboo house seemed to have entered a severe winter. The two of them had just stood still when they heard the evil demon's cold voice. If anything happens to Shue, those people will all be buried with her. The demon said coldly. He wasn't asking for their opinions, but merely informing them. Upon hearing this, the two of them were shocked. Was this guy planning to start a massacre? Moreover, although the evildoer didn't say it explicitly, they knew who he wanted to bury with. It was undeniable that the mistress of the dark world was angry at those who were saved. After hesitating for a while, Qing Yang couldn't help but whisper, "Mistress of the dark world, can you let them go?" As soon as he said that, Qing Yang immediately felt the temperature around him drop by quite a bit. Instantly, his heart began to tremble involuntarily, but he still mustered his courage and forced himself to look straight at the demon. The demon's back was facing them the entire time. "What do you think? If I didn't save you in them, how would Shue be injured? Therefore, if Shue did not recover, they would all die. All of them added together can't compare to my Shue heir's life. As for you guys, I won't let you off either. However, I won't kill you. After all, you are Shue heir's senior brothers." The demon's voice was filled with the smell of blood. In fact, if anything had happened to Shue, he would have wanted to kill these two culprits. However, he knew that Shue would not want him to kill his senior brother. Therefore, he had no choice but to let them live. Although he was angry, he hated himself even more. He always said that he would protect Shue's safety and would not let her life be in danger. However, at the critical moment, he had still hurt Shue. This fact made him blame himself indescribably. He had never felt this kind of feeling before. It was really very uncomfortable. His heart was also in pain. Chapter 2119. Injured 3. Shue, you'll be fine. After hearing the evildoer's words, Qing Yang mumbled, and the guilt in his heart grew deeper. "You can get out now. I don't want to see you." Ignoring Qing Yang's words, the evildoer directly drove him away, but he was snorting coldly in his heart. "You don't need to tell me that." Of course, nothing would happen to his Shue, and he would not allow anything to happen to her. Then, the demon waved his hand, and an invisible air pressure swept onto Bing Yao and Qing Yang, who were about to leave. Then, the two were swept out of the purple bamboo house like fallen leaves in the autumn wind. Seeing that the room was quiet again, the evil demon swept his palm and closed the door of the purple bamboo room. Then, he climbed onto the bed and sat Shue down cross-legged, placing his palms on Lung Ruoxu's back. Following that, a visible stream of spirit qi entered Lung Ruoxu's body. At this moment, the origin of chaos in Lung Ruoxu's body was helping her to repair her damaged divine consciousness. Hence, she needed the support of a large amount of spiritual energy. If Shue were to absorb it on her own, it would definitely not be able to support the speed of her spiritual energy usage. Hence, he would need to transfer his own spiritual energy to Shue. However, he could not transfer too much at once. Otherwise, it would be troublesome if Shue's body was filled with spiritual energy. After a while, he felt that it was enough for now, so he stopped and laid Shue down on the bed again. At this moment, Lung Ruoxu's body was covered in a faint layer of light. This was a clear sign that the origin of chaos was repairing her. With the help of the origin of chaos, the demon's heart that had been clenched all this time was slightly relieved. However, he still did not dare to let his guard down. He kept a close eye on Lung Ruoxu and observed her situation. As Shue's expression slowly turned for the better, his mood also gradually turned gloomy. However, Uncle Long and the rest who were outside the purple bamboo house were not too sure about Lung Ruoxu's situation. Hence, they were still on tenterhooks, afraid that they would hear bad news. Of course, the most depressed one was Green Vessel. After many failed attempts, he also stopped because he could not affect the origin of chaos to treat his sister. With the help of the origin of chaos, his sister should be fine. However, he was depressed that he couldn't be by his sister's side, as if there was a kitten scratching his heart. However, knowing that the origin of chaos had taken action, he was still very happy for his sister, because this meant that the origin of chaos had truly acknowledged his sister. And with the approval of the origin of chaos, it would definitely not let anything happen to its sister. Even though he was relieved, Qing-ju was still depressed. He could not do anything to the demon, so he could only turn his attention to Bing Yao and Qing Yang and vent his anger on them. In fact, he was the one who liked to vent his anger the most. However, he had been focused on his sister before, so the two of them had escaped. Now he had the time. With a thought, Qing-ju moved Bing Yao and Qing Yang into a dark room. However, everyone's thoughts were on Shui, so no one had discovered that they had gone missing. After an unknown amount of time, there was still no news from the purple bamboo house. However, it was not a bad thing that there was no news. Uncle Long, the others, and the beasts thought to themselves. At the same time, Tsang, who had been thrown into the Divine Master's residence by Lung Ruoxue, started to feel restless. Tsang paced around the room, feeling empty inside. He didn't know what was going on, but he felt a little anxious, as if something was about to happen. However, he had yet to recognize a master, so he had no idea what was going on with Lung Ruoxue and the others. Now it really regretted it. Why did it listen to Nyo's words and recognize her as its master after saving her? Even though it would take a long time to recognize a master, but if it recognized a master earlier, wouldn't it know how Nyo was? But now, other than feeling that something had happened, it could do nothing about it. In addition, Neo and the others were currently in the space of the rime ice. No matter how powerful it was still unable to sense the situation there. This fact also made it exceptionally angry. At this moment, Tsang couldn't help but recall the words that Lung Ruoxue had said to him before entering the medium. Initially, it had wanted to follow Lung Ruoxue and the rest into the place, but Neo had asked it to stay outside to meet them. Neo had also said that even though she didn't need its help to save them, if they were really in danger, she still hoped that it could lend a helping hand. How did it answer back then? It said that it would not care. When it said this, it carried a trace of anger, but at that time, it didn't feel that Neo was disappointed. Thinking about it now, although it had said those harsh words, it definitely wouldn't watch Neo be in danger. Neo most likely knew that she had a sharp mouth but a soft heart, so she didn't force it to be like this. And when did it start to feel uneasy? After thinking for a long time, Azure forced himself to calm down and not panic. Although he was a little uneasy, Neo had that broken bracelet, so nothing might happen to her. After thinking about it, it decided to wait and see. However, it still had to do something. With this thought, Tsang disappeared from the room. A moment later, a small and exquisite Totoro appeared at the entrance of the Divine Master's residence. When the guard at the door saw the Totoro, he was so scared that his legs trembled and his face turned pale. His body trembled like a leaf in the wind. He pointed at Tsang and stuttered. "You..." The guard stammered for a long time, but he could not say a complete sentence. "You what? If you point at me again, they'll make you pay." Tsang roared in extreme displeasure. Oomph. Previously, it couldn't see the light when it followed Neo and the others, but this time, it wanted to live in the Divine Master's estate openly and get close to the fog ripple. To put it bluntly, it wanted to stay by her side and monitor her. This way, it should be able to get some clues about Neo from her. Thinking of this, Tsang's aura became even stronger, the pressure on his body instantly rising, scaring the guard to his knees. At this moment, the three reverent god-level experts of the God Lord's estate, who had sensed something strange, appeared at the entrance. Looking at the arrogant Totoro who was floating in the air as if he was looking at ants, the three of them sighed in unison. Why is this guy here again? However, Xin-Yi understood the situation. Therefore, his sigh was more of an act. He had the highest status among the three hierarch, so he naturally had to speak first. "Senior, you've come." "Yes, I'm here to see Wuchen. I miss her." Azure indifferently replied. Listening to the conversation between the man and the beast, the corners of Huang Wei and Xia Yi's mouths twitched. Why was this conversation so strange? However, they didn't dare to say anything at this time. Otherwise, if the Totoro got angry, they wouldn't be able to take it. Jiansung only glanced at them with slight disdain and did not pay any attention to them. The two of them immediately heaved a sigh of relief. However, Shinny didn't know how to answer after hearing Song's words. Could he say that the Divine Master didn't miss him, nor did he want to see him? The answer was definitely no, but he knew that the Divine Master would never see the Azure. Oh, if that was the case, perhaps the God Lord's manor that had just been built not long ago would be lost again. When he thought of this, he actually felt a little excited. However, he immediately put away his gloating thoughts and said in a serious tone, "Senior Song, please come in and take a seat." "All right." Song gave Xian Yi a look of admiration. Then, he descended from the sky and walked into the Divine Master's residence with small steps. Xian Yi and the other two followed closely behind it. In the meantime, Huang Wei and Xia Yi kept communicating with Xian Yi with their eyes. "Why did you let it in? How dangerous was that?" The words "this Totoro is very troublesome" were clearly written in their eyes. Xian Yi only used his eyes to reply that it was more dangerous to leave it outside. Instantly, the two of them wilted. That's right. This Totoro's destructive power was obvious to all. If they really stopped it outside and did not let it enter the Divine Lord's residence, it might destroy the Divine Lord's residence in a rage. However, for some reason, Huang Wei and Xia Yi felt that even if they had respectfully invited this terrifying Totoro in, why did they still feel that the Totoro would do such a thing? The two of them shivered and immediately threw this terrifying thought out of their minds. Then, they carefully followed Azure to the living room. On the other side, Fog knew that Azure had come again. Sitting on the throne in the main hall, Wu Xian felt a headache as soon as he thought of the uninvited fellow. She was busy searching for the man who had broken into her space and rescued her prisoners. Where would he have the time to deal with that bastard Song? Moreover, she was well aware that Song's arrival was definitely not for good. Glancing at the guard who had come to inform her of this news and was waiting for her instructions, Wu Xiao said indifferently, "Tell Xian Yi and the other two to take good care of it and tell them I'm not here." "Yes." The guard quickly left the main hall after hearing Wu Chen's words. At this time, a black-robed man standing beside Wu Yin saw that the guard had left and said, "My lord, can you not see it? That guy won't believe it. If it causes any more trouble, our God Lord's estate will be in a worse position." "Oomph. It would dare." The black-clothed man's words made Ripple's anger instantly rise, but she couldn't help but think in her heart that if she avoided him, that bastard might really cause a scene. AI, what a troublesome fellow. Chapter 21:20 Rumors of Death 1. Thinking of this, Wu Xian stood up and disappeared from the hall. At the same time, the guard had already passed on Wu Xiao's words to Tsang. After hearing this, Tsang's small face immediately collapsed. His dark starry eyes sparkled and the aura on his body was slightly desolate. There was a sad atmosphere around him. Seeing this scene, Xian Yi and the other two's foreheads were immediately filled with black lines. They all sighed in their hearts at the same time. Did he have to be like this? If they didn't know that this Totoro was a hypocrite, they would have thought that this little guy had been abandoned by their master. However, at this moment, none of them dared to interrupt. They tried their best to lower their presence so that the Totoro wouldn't take its anger out on them. The guard who reported this scene was so nervous that his legs were trembling. If this Totoro became angry because of this, he was afraid that he would lose his life. At this time, Tsang, who had been resentful for a long time, finally raised his head and looked at the guard who had informed him of this news. Immediately, the guard was so frightened that his heart jumped wildly. His originally tall body trembled involuntarily, and his small face instantly turned pale. If one didn't know, wouldn't they think that someone in his family had died? Then he heard Song's voice choking as he whispered, "Did Rhyme say where it was? I'm going to find her." Song seemed to have made a huge decision. Hearing these words, the guard even wanted to die. Where was he? Where else could the Divine Master be? Of course, she was in her own palace. However, he didn't dare to say this out loud. Otherwise, not only would Song not let him off, but the Divine Master wouldn't let him off either. Therefore, when he heard Song's words, The guard's face twisted as if he was constipated. His face turned red and white, making Xian Yi somewhat unable to bear it. AI. When their boss was fighting, they were innocent. Xian Yi couldn't help sighing. However, he didn't want to stand up for the guard, so he could only pray for his own good fortune. I don't know where the Master God went. After holding it in for a long time, the guard's face was a little dark, and he stuttered. How is that possible? Didn't she tell me that she was going out? If she were to encounter danger and die, wouldn't you have no place to bury her? After hearing the guard's words, Song's face was full of disapproval, and what it said made everyone's hearts tremble in fear. Wasn't this cursing the Divine Master? Huang Wei and Xia Yi were so scared that their faces turned white. The guard's body was trembling like a sieve. Only Xian Yi was still calm. However, he had to pretend to be afraid. Besides, he had already discovered that Wu Xian was hiding in a corner outside the living room. He believed that the Totoro must have known that fog was nearby, so it said that. Instantly, his respect for Tsang was like a torrential river, endless. However, no one dared to reply to Tsang's words. Azure didn't expect them to respond, so he continued to complain. You're really outrageous. How can you be his subordinates? You don't even care about where the Divine Master is. Aren't you afraid that something might happen to her? If anything happens to her, you'll all be crying. AI. When Tsang said this, his expression was one of disappointment. Hearing this, Xian Yi and the others felt guilty, as if they had really done something wrong. Xian Yi expressed that he was helpless. At the same time, he had a deeper understanding of Tsang's endless pestering. This Totoro definitely had the ability to anger people to death. He was even more convinced that at this time, Wu Xian must be fuming with anger, because he could clearly feel that the air pressure in the living room had become lower and there were gusts of cold wind around him. However, Wu Jing didn't say anything, so he could only pretend that he didn't know anything. At this moment, he heard Azure mutter to himself, No, I have to go find Wu Jing. After all, we have been friends for so many years. I can't be as heartless as you and not care about her life or death. If I'm alive, I want to see the person. If I'm dead, I want to see the corpse. Azure seemed to have made up its mind once again. After saying this, it started to wail again. Wu Cheng, God Lord, where are you? You can't be in trouble. I still want to see you one last time. You must wait for me. Woo-woo. This time, its wail was extremely loud, and its divine power had been added into the sound to make it more convenient to spread out. As a result, the sound spread through the entire imperial city in an instant, and there was a trend of it spreading out. It's finished. This is bad. When Xian Yi, Huang Wei, and Xia Yi heard Song's howl, their hearts immediately thumped. An unknown premonition welled up in their hearts. This guy kept saying that Wu Chun had something to do and wanted to see the Divine Master one last time. He was clearly saying that the Divine Master was dying. How could the Divine Master endure such a red-hot curse? The admiration the three of them had for Wu Chun had reached an unprecedented height. See, the Divine Master was indeed extraordinary. He was already cursed to death, yet he could still keep his cool. If it were them, they would have jumped out and scolded the other party or fought with him. Moreover, they didn't believe that the God Lord wouldn't have heard them. Now, he had clearly heard it, but he was unwilling to come out. It seemed that the Master God was also worried about this Totoro. In an instant, Tsang's position in their hearts rose even higher. In fact, it wasn't that Wu Xiao wasn't angry, but she was very clear that Tsang had said these words on purpose to anger her and make her appear. Therefore, since she knew this, how could she be easily fooled? Therefore, even though she was already furious, she could only endure it. After Tsang finished howling, it realized that it didn't get the effect it wanted and immediately became listless. However, seeing its sickly appearance, the people present became even more worried. Wasn't there a saying called the final radiance before death? Although these words were not suitable for Azure, they felt that there was nothing more suitable for it. Right, the calm before the storm was fine, but it didn't seem like Azure would calm down. As expected, not long after they had this thought, they saw the originally listless azure suddenly become spirited and started howling again. God Lord Fog Ripple, you've died so tragically. You didn't even let me see you one last time. This time, the divine power it had infused into its voice was even stronger. Therefore, the voice directly transmitted through the imperial city. The people of the divine master's estate ran to the courtyard in a panic from their respective places. When they met their colleagues, they looked at each other and cried in unison, "Divine Lord, how could you have died? Who was it? Who did this? We will definitely avenge you." For a moment, the wails of ghosts and howls of wolves reverberated through the entire divine master's estate. Chapter 21:21. Rumors of Death 2. When they heard the wailing that entered the living room and the reluctance to part with Wu Chun in the voice, Xian, Yi, and the other two instantly turned to stone. Wu Chun, who was hiding in the corner of the living room, saw this scene and her face turned completely black. At this time, several black-robed men appeared in front of Wu Jing with a whoosh. The leader of the black-robed men looked at Wu Jing with a worried expression. His red eyes were filled with concern. Seeing this, Wu Jing became even more annoyed. "Don't tell me you guys also think I'm dead." Fog Ripple suppressed her anger and growled. That damned Azure, not only did he curse her, he even caused such a huge commotion. Now, the news of her death had probably spread throughout the entire divine realm. This was the regret in her heart. If she had known that Song was so evil, she wouldn't have hidden, but it seemed a little too late now. When the black-clothed men heard Wu Xiao's words, they all shivered in their hearts. The leader of the black-clothed men even took the initiative to say, "No, I didn't." Their master would last for thousands of generations and would never fall. And please rest assured, Master, we will find a way to stop this rumor from spreading. We will not let anyone ruin Master's reputation. It's too late, Wu Xiao said indifferently. She had made a mistake. It was all her fault for having a trace of luck in her heart, thinking that if she could avoid seeing Song, she would try her best not to see him. Now she really regretted it so much that her intestines turned green. However, compared to her death, she was more worried about those guys who had broken into her prison. Why were there so many worrying things around him recently? This made her a little mad. When the leader of the men in black heard his master say "too late" in such a depressed voice, he immediately said, "It's not too late. I'll do my best to control the situation to the smallest extent. Please rest assured, my lord." After he finished speaking, he led the black-robed men to bow to the mist, and then disappeared. When Ripple saw this, her beautiful face didn't have much of a reaction. Then, she unwillingly walked into the living room. Song, who was lying on a chair in the living room, was secretly laughing. When he felt the familiar aura, he didn't even raise his head. Instead, he lowered his head even more and pretended to be heartbroken. When Ripple saw this, the anger in her heart instantly exploded. "Stop pretending. You're doing all this just to force me out." Ripple Mist was well aware of this, which was why she didn't want to see this annoying fellow. With her roar, Xian, Yi, and the other two immediately returned to their normal state. However, their expressions were not very good. It was obvious that they had been greatly shocked. "AI, this is a big problem." At this time, Song was like a little wife, taking the initiative to float in front of the raging fog, looking at her and whispering, "Miss Wu Yin, we haven't seen each other for a long time. Did you miss me? I didn't. Not only did I not think of you, I even wish that you would never appear." Although this guy was the spirit of the God-protecting tower, she didn't have any thoughts about this vile guy. In fact, back then, she was just like everyone else in the divine realm. She was filled with all kinds of fantasies about the guardian tower spirit and wanted to become its master. However, ever since she found out about this fellow's bad nature, she had completely given up. Moreover, it wasn't necessary for a divine master to possess in God-protecting pagoda, and even if you didn't obtain this fellow's approval, didn't he still remain as in divine master for countless years and receive the love and respect of the people of the divine realm? Therefore, she did not have a strong desire to own the God-protecting pagoda. What she wanted the most was the universal bracelet that had been missing for a long time. That was the key to her securing her position as the divine master. Everything else was nonsense. It was because of this that her attitude toward Song was not very friendly, but she did not dare to go too far. After all, she still had a lot of scruples about Song. But I miss you. I really, really miss you. Hearing the unhesitating, I didn't think from Wu Ling, Song deliberately remained silent for a long time before speaking in an aggrieved voice. From time to time, it would use its watery eyes to secretly glance at Wu Ling, acting pitiful. When Wu Jing heard this, she couldn't help but roll her eyes and indifferently asked, "What did you miss me about?" "Of course I want to kill you. I want you to be unlucky. I want to see you make a fool of yourself. I want to cause you trouble," Song thought in his mind, but he still showed an extremely shy expression on his face. He only said half of the sentence, leaving the other half for the people to guess. What are you thinking about?" Wu Yin deliberately asked in confusion. "Why are you so bad? You know what I'm thinking, but you still have to ask so clearly? I won't tell you, you can guess." Song was even more embarrassed and didn't dare to raise his head. He didn't dare to look at the fog. However, he couldn't help but feel confused when he saw its current appearance. Isn't this a little too much? Yi and the others were dumbfounded. Guess your sister." Wu Jing was also speechless for a moment. She discovered that Song's skin was even thicker than she had imagined. For a moment, she could not find any good words to refute Song. Thus, the atmosphere instantly became heavy. Feeling the cold air in the living room, Yi and the others suddenly felt a mountain of pressure. They wanted to sneak away, but Master Godsong didn't say anything, so it seemed that they couldn't escape. Hence, they could only watch cautiously as Azure and Rhyme stared at each other. After an unknown amount of time, Song and Wu Xiao were still affectionately looking at each other, and Xianyi could clearly see that the coldness on Wu Xiao's body was almost solid and was spreading out, and more. As for Azure, he was still calm and bashful as he stared at the fog with deep affection. However, Xianyi could swear that the deep affection in Azure's eyes could kill people invisibly because he had already seen through Azure's seemingly deep gaze and saw the dangerous flames hidden beneath it. This was definitely a high-risk signal. Thinking of this, he quietly moved to the back of the chair and tried to lower his presence. Then, he quietly wiped the cold sweat on his forehead. The pressure was too great, wasn't it? At this moment, Wu Han finally spoke out of compassion. "All of you, go out and warn those rascals." Towards those people's behavior, she was quite angry. However, those people were the only people she could use other than the black-robed man. They had lost their self-control out of concern for her. Therefore, she could not be too strict with them and could only gloomily swallow this loss in silence. As for the main culprit of this matter, she was even more helpless. This fact made her feel rather helpless, and her gaze towards Song became even more unfriendly. Upon hearing Wu Yin's words, Yi and the others immediately rushed out of the living room like rabbits that had escaped from the cage, as if they were afraid that Wu Yin would go back on her words. However, they were also surprised that Wu Yin was so easy to talk to this time. They didn't expect that Wu Yin didn't want to punish those mourning fellows this time, but only asked them to give a warning. In this regard, the sensitive he seemed to have noticed a trace of strangeness. Chapter 21-22, Rumors of Death 3. After they left, only Song and Wu Xiao were left in the large living room. Song was still peeking at Fog Ripple, causing her to feel irritated. She said impatiently, "All right, don't pretend to be so pitiful. Why did you come this time? Tell me. I've said it before, I miss you," Song said, not cherishing the opportunity. "Do you think I'm stupid?" Wu Yin softly sighed and indifferently said, "You're not stupid. How could you be so silly?" Song said very honestly. Honesty was a virtue, and as a responsible artifact spirit, it could not lie. "Since you know I'm not stupid, why are you still lying to me? Do you think I'll believe you?" Ripple was speechless. but she couldn't help but think to herself, has she been too indulgent with this guy all this time? However, what could he do if he didn't indulge it? He couldn't hit her. She didn't care about scolding him. He was a pain in the ass, and his skin was extremely thick. He couldn't be offended. Thus, when Rhyme faced Song, there was only one word to describe her feelings, and that was aggrieved. It was not just a normal grievance. It's your problem whether you believe it or not, but it's my problem whether I want to or not. After hearing Wu Xian's words, Qi Man said nonchalantly, since it said it wanted to, this woman couldn't do anything to it. Moreover, it really liked to see the expression on her face when she had no choice but to grit her teeth and endure it after it had angered her half to death. Hee hee, it was really too good. Sure enough, Fog was once again speechless from Song's anger. She could only grit her teeth and stare at it. When Song saw this, he continued disapprovingly, I've decided to stay here for a period of time, so you have to treat me well. How long do you plan to stay? Upon hearing this, the anger in Ripple's heart instantly surged, her chest heaving up and down. She really want to strangle this hateful guy. Well, see, Azure said calmly and ignored Wu Xiao's anger. By the way, lend me the 3 reverent gods of your divine master's estate as my underlings for the time being. During the time I'm staying here, they will serve me. All right, Mist gritted her teeth and agreed. In fact, her objection was useless. Azure didn't care about her opinion at all. After saying that, Wu Xiao didn't even look at Song and disappeared on the spot. Just like that, the jobs of Xian, Yi, and the other 2 were decided for some time in the future. When they received the news from the Divine Master, the 3 of them were dumbfounded. Why? Could they not get rid of the Totoro? Huang Wei and Xia Yi wanted to cry, but had no tears. The 2 of them were in the same boat, and their feelings instantly deepened. Although Xian Yi looked as depressed as them on the surface, he was much more relaxed than them. In fact, Song Yi did indeed look at him differently. At least, he didn't make things too difficult for him, but the other 2 were in a terrible state. Because Song was extremely disdainful of their strength, so as long as he had time, he would train them fiercely. After a few days, the 2 of them had lost a lot of weight. Song's cultivation was profound as he was able to make a supreme god slim down. Xian Yi's job was to accompany Song to stroll around the Divine Lord's mansion every day. The 2 of them were very envious, jealous, and hateful. However, this was Song's decision, so they only dared to think about it in their hearts and didn't dare to show it. In the garden, Song was lying comfortably on a recliner. Xian Yi was sitting on the side, feeding him fruits from time to time. This little life was very nourishing. However, Song wasn't completely enjoying it. Its spiritual awareness was constantly monitoring Wu Xiao's every move. Moreover, it was definitely monitoring openly. At the same time, Wu Xiao was also monitoring it. It only saw that other than strolling every day, it was either eating or sleeping. Therefore, her heart that had been hanging in the air was slightly relieved, but she definitely didn't dare to be completely at ease. How's the news of Wu Yan's death? Azure was nibbling on a fiery red fruit as he transmitted his voice to Xian Yi. Most of the people in the divine realm already know about it. Wuhan also sent people to stop it, but the effect was minimal. Xian Yi replied as he wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. Even though he suspected that Song's goal was not just for the Qi Miss Gu, but this kind of public opinion was often the most difficult to control, and the consequences were very serious. In addition, many unfamiliar faces had suddenly entered the imperial city recently. These people belonged to various large and small families in the divine realm, and they must have come to verify the truth of this matter. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but admire Song's ruthlessness. How much did he hate Rhyme Ice? Only then would he be able to create rumors of someone's death. Furthermore, it was not secretly created, but said in front of the person involved. He even felt some sympathy for Wuhan. However, Song's next words made him feel lost, because Azure had told him to borrow a black-robed man from the mist to take it out for a walk. When he heard this, he even said in a silly manner, "Why do you need to borrow the black-clothed man from a mist? I can just take you out." As soon as he said this, he received a look of disappointment from Song Hen. Suddenly, He felt that he had said the wrong thing. Then, he resigned himself to his fate and went to find Wu Jing. After telling Wu Yao about Song's intentions, Wu Yao looked at Xian Yi for a while and then let him take away a black-clothed man. Although the entire process had only been a few minutes, Xian Yi felt as if a century had passed. In particular, Wu Yan's probing gaze made him feel uneasy, as if he was sitting on pins and needles. After he left the main hall of Wu Yan, his back was already wet. In fact, the existence of these black-clothed men might be mysterious to the outside world, but in the Divine Lord's manor, they were an open secret. Moreover, everyone in the Divine Lord's manor knew that they were Wu Xiao's trusted aides and that these people had high positions in the Divine Lord's manor. However, besides Wu Xiao, Song was probably the only one who dared to use these black-clothed men so directly. At least, he would not dare to order these people. More importantly, they didn't listen to their orders. Bringing the expressionless man in black to Song, Xian Yi's mission was considered complete. After that, Song took the man in black, waved goodbye to Xian Yi's group, and left the Divine Lord's estate. After Song left, Huang Wei and Xia Yi both let out a long sigh. Xian Yi saw their appearance and couldn't help but laugh. It seemed that Song had tormented them these few days. However, once Azure goes out, I'm afraid Lord Divine Master will become famous again, right? Thinking of this possibility, Xian Yi understood why Song didn't bring him out. Then, he looked at Huang Wei and Xia Yi and said with sympathy, "Sir Song has given us a new task." When the two of them heard that, they immediately widened their eyes in disbelief and said in unison, "What mission?" These words made the two of them want to die. Sir Song is addicted to eating trout these days, so he asked us to catch some for him. Xian Yi said nonchalantly, as if he was saying that the weather today was really good. However, when Huang Wei and Xia Yi heard this, their expressions changed drastically. Trout. Was that easy to catch? Although the fish were only low-level spirit beasts, they lived in the deep sea 10,000 meters below the surface. Not only were they extremely difficult to catch, but they were also extremely ferocious and often appeared in groups. Even if supreme divinity cultivators could reach that depth, their strength would be greatly reduced once they entered the water. It would be very troublesome if they encountered a school of trout. Their hair stood on end as they recalled the trout's sharp fangs. Xian Yi knew what they were thinking when he saw their expressions. He smiled faintly and said, "What's wrong? Are you afraid? You're reverent god level. If people knew that you were afraid of fish, they would laugh their heads off." "We're not afraid. It's just, Huang Wei stammered for a long time, but he did not know what to say. In reality, he was not that afraid. He only felt that it was very troublesome. Moreover, even if this was the Divine Lord's residence, they did not often eat a troublesome thing like a trout. However, the Totoro had become addicted to it and had even arranged such a mission for them. It cannot be denied that he was rather depressed. He wasn't so free that he had nothing to do. How could he be willing to go down to the dark, deep sea to be a fisherman? But could he not go? The answer was no. With this knowledge, he didn't say anything more. He could only resign himself to his fate and follow behind Xian Yi to become a fisherman. Xian Yi, who was quite clear about their thoughts, deeply felt that these two people didn't know how lucky they were because he knew that Song's arrangement was to get them out of this situation. Therefore, he was sure that Song would do something. It had to be said that Xian Yi was not far from the truth. The reason why Song had arranged for the three of them to catch fish for him was because he didn't want them to become the punching bags of Wu Xiao. Of course, the main reason was for Xian Yi. After all, he was one of their own. As for Huang Wei and Xia Yi, they were just in passing to confuse Wu Chen's line of sight so that she wouldn't have any suspicions about Xian Yi. Otherwise, she wouldn't be so kind. At this moment, Song was swaggering down the main street of Yu City with small steps. Behind him was a black-clothed man who exuded a vicious aura and was filled with a bloodthirsty aura. Along the way, the cute Azure attracted the attention of countless people, especially some female creatures. When they saw Azure, their eyes lit up with countless stars and pink bubbles. However, Azure ignored them. Chapter 21-23. You want to be my master? 1. However, there were some things that the more you ignored, the more it would attract other people's interest. And in this world, there was no lack of people who would never turn back. Now, someone wanted to test his charm. Looking at the woman standing in front of him, Song Wei frowned imperceptibly. His small mouth twitched, and he said indifferently, "Is there something?" Originally, it didn't want to pay attention to this ugly woman, but she was in its way. However, the woman in front of Song didn't feel that her actions had aroused the beast's disgust in the slightest. Instead, she put on an affable appearance and gently said, "Little guy, Big Sister likes you a lot. Be Big Sister's beast pet, okay?" The woman's voice was so gentle that water could drip out. The smile on her face was also exceptionally bright, and her beautiful eyes looked like those of a wolfess. Now, in the divine realm, it was very popular to keep Totorians. This had also become a symbol of the status of the daughters of various large and small clans. After all, the Totorians had caused too much trouble in the divine realm a while ago. What was even more bizarre was that the Divine Lord's estate had not punished the Totorians. This had also allowed many people to see that the Totorians were different from the rest. Thus, for a time, Totorians had become the most popular pets in the divine realm. However, what was depressing was that the Totoro clan seemed to have disappeared from the divine realm overnight. No matter how hard they searched, they could not find a single trace of a Totoro. Now that they had seen one in the Imperial City, and it seemed that its bloodline was very pure, this woman naturally did not want to let it go. The woman automatically ignored the black-clothed man behind Totoro. "You want to be my master?" After hearing the woman's words, Song's eyes flickered and he indifferently said, Yes, yes. Sister likes you very much." The woman hurriedly expressed her position. In the divine realm, it was truly too difficult to take in a beast. Furthermore, there were many beasts that the majority of people could not afford to offend. There were pitifully few beasts that wanted to take a human as their master. Thus, when she faced Song, even if she was unwilling in her heart, she could only use coaxing. "But I don't like you." Song Lian didn't even lift his eyelids. His tone was even colder, but he couldn't help but snort in his heart. Anyone could dream of a woman who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. "Why don't you like me? Or am I not good?" Hearing Song say that he didn't like her, the woman immediately exploded. He had roared, "I don't like the fact that you don't mean what you say. Look at you. You're clearly a shrew, but you're pretending to be an obedient girl to trick me. Moreover, you're not a good master. Those who want to be your tamed beast must have been extremely unlucky," Azure said without mercy. As soon as it said this, the onlookers couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat for it. They couldn't help but secretly praise it. This Totoro was really too powerful. It actually dared to say this kind of thing in front of the person involved. Was it not afraid that the other party would be angry from embarrassment? Many sharp-eyed people had already recognized the woman. She was the most beloved daughter of the Yao family, the 11th young miss of the Yao family, Yao Man. However, not to mention that Song didn't know Yao Man's identity. Even if it did, it wouldn't care. After all, there weren't many people in the world that it cared about. When Yao Man heard Song's words, her face turned red in anger, then white, then black. Her chest heaved up and down in anger, causing the surrounding wolves to take advantage of her. However, she didn't seem to notice it, or rather, she didn't care. She even puffed up her chest and roared angrily, "Damn it! You're just a Totoro. Don't refuse a toast and eat a forfeit. Are you trying to scare me? I'm so scared." Song pretended to be afraid. Then, he turned around and complained to the man in black. "Little Black, someone is threatening me." As it spoke, its eyes suddenly became misty, causing many people present to feel heartache. However, due to the identity of the Yao family's young lady, and the Yao family's status in the divine realm was like the sun in the sky, no one dared to speak up for Song, even if they sympathized with Qing Song's experience. However, when a man in black heard Wan Song's words, he couldn't help but twitch his mouth. He thought, It's good enough that you don't bully others. Who dares to bully you? Wouldn't that be courting death? However, since Song had come to support him, he had to give him face. But before he could say anything, Yao Man Man turned to look at him. Yao Man Man's beautiful eyes swept across the room and revealed a smile that she thought was charming and charming. Her eyes were glistening and moist. Then, she threw a charming look at the man in black and said gently, "Brother, can you give me your Totoro?" She had mistaken the man in black for the Totoro's master. When the man in black heard this, he was so frightened that his heart trembled. Then, he carefully looked at Song and stuttered, "It's not mine." Oh. Hearing this, Yao Man Man was even happier. Since it was ownerless, then it would naturally belong to whoever liked it first. As she thought of this, she had already walked forward and bent down, wanting to directly carry Song. However, in the next second, everyone saw a flash of cold light, followed by a owl. Yao Man Man's shrill cry was heard. It was a tragic cry, so before anyone could see what was going on, they were already scared out of their wits. Then they saw Yao Man Man covering her face with both hands as she fell to the ground, her body convulsing nonstop. In the end, she fainted from the pain after a few cries. What was going on? Was he scratched? It seemed to be very miserable. Everyone was guessing, but no one dared to step forward to help Yao Man Man. In this day and age, good things couldn't be done easily. Otherwise, it would be terrible if they were framed. At this moment, a young master in luxurious clothes received the news and ran over with a few subordinates. He shouted, "Man, man, what's wrong with you?" With that, he squatted down and reached out to pull Yao Man Man's hand away from her face. He happened to see the scars on Yao Man Man's face, and he turned pale with fright. The crowd took the opportunity to take a good look at the wounds on Yao Man Man's face. There were 5 deep claw marks on her left cheek, and blood was gushing out of them, staining her face red. It was a horrifying sight. Then, they looked at Song with fear in their eyes. Oh my God, this Totoro was too terrifying. Someone had only taken a fancy to it and wanted to obtain it, but it had disfigured a peerless beauty like a flower in jade. This was really vicious. Everyone had mixed feelings. However, this was also because they didn't know Song's identity. Otherwise, they wouldn't have dared to have such thoughts. One had to know that in the divine realm, Song was an existence that was not inferior to the divine master. The divine realm also respected the strong. As a result, how could he allow an ant to profane him? Although this ant did not know his identity, he had already said that he did not like her, yet that damned woman still wanted to use force and even threatened him. How could he tolerate this? Chapter 21-24. You want to be my master? 2. Even that woman, Fog, didn't dare to provoke it. So what was this woman? Song was used to being overbearing, so it naturally wouldn't let Yao Man Man do as she pleased. As a result, Yao Man Man was in a tragic state. However, Song didn't feel that he had hit her too hard. He had only scratched this annoying woman once. Compared to what he had done to Wu Xiao, it was nothing. Song's face was calm. After the young man fed Yao Man Man a healing pill, he ordered his men to carry her up. He stood up and scanned the crowd with his dark eyes before finally fixing his gaze on Song. At this moment, Song's sharp claws still had a trace of blood on them. He had not destroyed the corpse at all. After receiving the young master's unfriendly gaze, Song Huan raised the paw that he had scratched Yao Man Man with a "what can you do to me" expression. "Men, take this Totoro away." Seeing Song's display of power, the young master's anger rose. Without thinking, he directly ordered his subordinates. At this moment, he really hated this Totoro to the bone. Yao Man Man was very important to him, and it was related to whether he could get the first place in the fight for the position of the Yao family's young master. But now, it was ruined by this detestable Totoro. This was preposterous. Upon hearing the young master's order, a subordinate was about to step forward when he heard Song say calmly, "I don't need you to take me. I'll walk by myself." Its words made the man in black, who wanted to stop the other party, immediately take back his words. However, he couldn't help but pray for these people in his heart. They had brought an ancestor back. Just like that, Azure followed closely behind the young child. Behind him was the black-clothed man, and behind him were the young child subordinates. Such a strange combination caused the passers-by to be surprised, but Azure received many sympathetic gazes, which made him a little depressed. Did it look like it was that easy to bully? Oof. Who knows who's bullying who? After walking for a while, Song followed the young master to an inn. Coincidentally, this one was the one where Lung Ruoxue and the others were staying. This shop was called the Stream Residence, and it was owned by the Divine Master's estate. When the inn manager saw the young master, he immediately greeted him with a smile and said, "Young Master Yao, you're back. Your meal has been prepared, and young Master Ning and young Master Chung are also waiting for you." You see, the shopkeeper didn't finish his sentence because he had already heard about Yao Man's injury. At the same time, he also saw Totoro behind the young master. However, no matter how he looked at it, he felt that the Totoro looked familiar. "I know. Shopkeeper, they'll have to trouble you to help me look after this Totoro. Don't let it escape." After the young master finished speaking, he took out another cage and asked with his eyes, "Are you going to go in by yourself, or do I have to catch you?" When Tsang saw this, he jumped into the cage and even smiled at the young master, which greatly satisfied the young master's confidence. Then, there was a crack and the cage was locked. Fortunately, the cage was large enough, so Tsang didn't feel aggrieved staying inside. However, when the black-clothed man saw Tsang cooperate with the young master, he didn't know what Tsang was up to. This was really too strange. No matter how he thought about it, why did he feel that it was terrifying? After locking the cage, the young master handed the cage to the shopkeeper. Then, he ignored the man in black and went upstairs. The shopkeeper looked at the cage in his hand and felt like he was holding a hot potato. How did this happen? He didn't understand. It wasn't like the young master didn't have any subordinates. So why did he ask him to help look after the Totoro? Did he think that he was a subordinate of the Yao family? Thinking of this possibility, the shopkeeper was a little angry. Sensing the shopkeeper's unhappiness, Azure spoke with a look of sympathy. "Shopkeeper, that guy thinks you're a fool." He felt that since he had already paid for the accommodation, you would naturally have to satisfy all his requests. Therefore, to him, it would be a waste not to use you. "AI, you're really pitiful." After all, he's working for the Divine Master's estate, but now he's being ordered around like a servant by a Yao family member. It would have been fine if Tsang didn't say anything. After Tsang said this, the shopkeeper thought about it carefully and felt that it was indeed the case. Therefore, his face immediately drooped. After provoking Tsang, he sat in the corner of the cage, crossed his legs, and played with his big furry tail. Seeing that Tsang was enjoying himself so much, the black-clothed man's face twitched and stiffened. However, Tsang didn't have time to pay attention to him. Instead, he began to chat with the shopkeeper. As they chatted, the man and beast chatted happily. It could be said that Tsang had been leading the shopkeeper by the nose, but the shopkeeper didn't feel it at all. It was as if he had found a soulmate, and he told him everything he knew. However, Tsang and the shopkeeper's conversation was purely to pass the time. For the shopkeeper's mouth, he could at most know some gossip. It was impossible to know anything useful. However, Tsang didn't need to know any important information from the shopkeeper. It was enough to pass the time. At this moment, 3 young masters came down from upstairs. One of them was naturally the one who had locked Tsang up before. As for the other 2, their appearance, bearing, and even strength were all above that young masteress. And in the relationship between the 3 of them, the young master from before was clearly the one who was trying to curry favor. Seeing this, Tsang's mouth twitched, and he put on a pure and innocent expression. "Yao Qi, is this the Totoro that injured your sister?" As they spoke, the 3 had already arrived in front of Azure. Hearing one of them speak, Azure blinked his watery eyes and stared innocently at the handsome man. And Yao Qi nodded. If it wasn't for the fact that Chang Xian wanted to see the Totoro, he wouldn't have come down with them. But this Totoro looks so small and weak. It doesn't look like it can hurt your sister. Chang Xian looked at Tsang carefully and made an important conclusion. Hearing this, Tsang's expression became even more innocent, while Yao Qi almost roared in anger. If it wasn't him, who could it be? When he saw it, Its claws were still covered in blood. More importantly, there were no other beasts around at the time, so he didn't even need to think to know that it was definitely the Totoro's doing. Then, another handsome young man who had sized up Song Shujo also spoke. I don't think this Totoro is that capable either. Are you sure you're not mistaken? It was the young master of the Ning family, Ning Haolan. Ning Haolan's agreement almost made Yao Qi cough up blood. If Cheng Xian was the only one who thought so, he could still argue with him, but now that Ning Haolan had joined in, he had no choice but to back down. After all, he didn't want to offend the two of them at once. Therefore, he could only explain calmly. There's no mistake. There was blood on the Totoro's claws. Chapter 21-25. You want to be my master? 3. Blood? That doesn't prove anything, right? Maybe it accidentally hit it. Cheng Xian continued to speak in an infuriating manner. In truth, he had already heard the truth of the matter from his subordinates. However, he had deliberately wanted to anger Yao Qi, and this Totoro might be the one they were looking for. As such, he naturally had to lie through his teeth. Yao Qi wasn't stupid, and he could tell that Cheng Xian was clearly trying to exonerate the Totoro. Although he didn't think that with Cheng Xian's status and position, he would take a fancy to a weak Totoro with little strength, he still couldn't understand what Cheng Xian was trying to say. Could it be that Cheng Xian had also taken a fancy to this Totoro and wanted to please a certain woman? If that was the case, he would have to be careful. With this thought in mind, he could not refute Cheng Xian's words. However, it was impossible for him to agree with Cheng Xian, so he remained silent. Seeing that Yao Qi had stopped speaking, Cheng Xian could only continue. Yao Qi, let it out. If you lock a Totoro in a cage, you'll be despised. All right then. Seeing Ning Haolan's disapproving expression, Yao Qi had no choice but to compromise. However, before he let Song out, he still worriedly reminded him, this Totoro is very dangerous. You have to be careful. After that, he unwillingly opened the cage and arrogantly said to Song, who was sitting inside, come out. However, Azure didn't have any reaction. Damn it, I'm asking you to come out. Seeing that Song had put him in a difficult position, Yao Qi growled in anger. You are the one who should die. Oomph. You want me to come out, so I have to come out? How embarrassing would that be? I'm telling you, kid, if you want this lord to come out, you'll have to take the initiative to kowtow 3 times to this lord and admit that you were wrong. Otherwise, don't even think that this lord will come out. Azure said with a face that left no room for discussion. When Yao Qi heard this, he trembled in anger, his face turning red, then white, and finally black. Cheng Xian and Ning Haolan, on the other hand, laughed to themselves. This Totoro was really crazy, and it seemed to be the one they were looking for. At the thought of this, the two of them looked at each other quietly. Then, they each took half a step back and planned to watch a good show because they knew in their hearts that they could not afford to offend this Totoro. It was at this moment that they heard Yao Qi's furious roar. Damn it! You're really refusing a toast only to drink a forfeit. I've heard your sister say this before, but you've seen what happened to her. This lord hates being threatened the most, so speak. What kind of result do you want? Azure said with a smile. Hearing Song's words, Yao Qi was so angry that the veins on his forehead throbbed, and his face instantly darkened. He reached out to grab Song, but Song was faster. His claws flashed, and 5 deep claw marks appeared on Yao Qi's arm, causing blood to immediately spray out. Seeing this, Yao Qi was furious. He endured the pain and reached out to grab Song again. The petite Song was extremely agile, jumping up and down in the cage like a slippery loach. No matter how fast Yao Qi moved, he couldn't catch a single hair on Song's head. On his arm, Song had scratched a few more claw marks. In just a few minutes, Yao Qi's arm was already covered in blood, a terrible sight. When Ning Haolan and Cheng Xian saw this, they couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts. They deeply sympathized with Yao Qi, but at this moment, Yao Qi had long since lost his mind from anger. He had even forgotten the pain. All he wanted to do was to catch Song and teach it a lesson. Unfortunately, this wish of his was destined not to come true. After an unknown amount of time, Yao Qi was so exhausted that he was out of breath, his entire body drenched in sweat and blood. Song had clearly had enough fun, and he jumped out of the cage along Yao Qi's arm, over Yao Qi's head, and ran straight upstairs. Then, everyone in the hall heard ah. With a scream, an object fell from the upper floor. The object's head was facing down, and it hit the ground directly. It fainted, and a pair of white legs were exposed in front of everyone. It was obvious that this was a woman, and a woman in ragged clothes. The woman was none other than Yao Man, who had been scratched by Song. At this moment, the wounds on her face were almost healed, with only a few light pink marks left on her originally beautiful face. However, she looked extremely miserable now, as if she had been ravaged. Following that, another man, who was completely covered in red, fell from the top of the building and immediately fainted. This man gave off a more direct feeling than Yao Man. Not only was he not wearing any clothes, but there were also a few bloody scratch marks on his strong back. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that these scratch marks were definitely the work of a woman. They must have been made uncontrollably when they were in the heat of the moment. When they thought of Yao Man's previous behavior, everyone in the hall immediately understood what she meant. At this moment, although the main hall was not as crowded as usual, there were still dozens of people present. Some wanted to stay in the inn, while others were resting and chatting in the main hall. When they saw this scene, everyone stopped what they were doing at the same time. Their eyes darted back and forth between Yao Man, the red-skinned man, and Yao Qi. Yao Qi's heart burned with anger, but he didn't dare to make any movements. He was afraid that people would recognize that the woman was his sister. It was too embarrassing. He didn't need a guess to know what Yao Man had done. He had warned Man many times to be careful and not let anyone find out about it, so as not to embarrass the Yao family. He had also told her to keep a low profile. However, he didn't expect that it would be exposed in front of everyone today, which filled his heart with hatred. He knew that Yao Man was now a cripple, and he couldn't count on her to build a relationship with Cheng Xian and Ning Haolon. Even an ordinary man would not want such an embarrassing woman, let alone her status. Very quickly, these thoughts surfaced in Yao Qi's mind. Yao Man had become an abandoned pawn in his hands, but he would not let go of the person who had caused Man to end up like this. Just as he was thinking about who would dare to embarrass the Yao family in such a way, Song suddenly jumped down from building. Seeing the Totoro, Yao Qi's heart trembled. Could be the Totoro's doing? Damn it. He thought it had escaped. She didn't expect that he had gone upstairs to look for Yao Man. You did it. Yao Qi's eyes narrowed as he questioned her coldly. He knew that it was impossible for him to deny his relationship with Yao Man in front of Cheng Xian and Ning Haolon, so he had no choice but to vent his anger on the culprit. After all, the Yao family's reputation was more important. So what if I did it? Since you dared to scheme against me, you should be prepared for my revenge. Song stood on the staircase railing, his face full of disapproval. When it had first come upstairs, it had only intended to cause some trouble, but it hadn't expected to hear this adulterous couple scheming against it outside Yao Man's room. They even said that they wanted to kill it to vent their hatred and then turn it into a specimen. When it heard that, it couldn't take it anymore. Then, the adulterous couple suffered a tragedy. However, it didn't think that it had gone too far. After all, it was this woman who provoked it first. Since she dared to provoke it, she should be prepared for a tragedy. Who asked it to be in a bad mood? It felt that its temper had already been restrained. Otherwise, if it was in the past, it would have directly annihilated the Yao family. However, it did not have the mood to do so now. All its thoughts were on Lung Ruoxue, that chick. It had no way of knowing how she was doing, so it could only vent its anger on these unlucky fellows who had come to its door on their own accord. So it really couldn't be blamed. Seeing Song's innocent expression, Yao Qi couldn't control the anger in his heart. He shot forward like an arrow, wanted to rush in front of Song, but he had only taken 2 steps before he was pulled back by Cheng Xian. Are Are you sure you want to find trouble with this Totoro? Cheng Xian whispered into Yao Qi's ear. Although he wanted to watch a good show, he did not want the matter to be left unmanageable. If that Totoro annihilated the Yao clan in a fit of anger, wouldn't the current balance of the divine realm be disrupted? As such, he had kindly given Yao Qi a reminder, and Yao Qi was no fool. Hearing Cheng Xian's words, he immediately realized that this Totoro must have an extraordinary identity. Could it be that this Totoro was related to the one that had destroyed the Divine Lord's estate? He could not help but calm down. That's right. How could he have forgotten that the Totoro clan had a powerful background that no one could afford to provoke? And he had almost made a big mistake. Immediately, Yao Qi broke out in a cold sweat, and the anger in his eyes slowly extinguished. Looking gratefully at Cheng Xian, Yao Qi quickly thanked him. Thank you for your reminder, Brother Cheng. I was also blinded by anger. That's why I'm fussing over Totoro. He found himself a way out. Naturally, Cheng Xian smiled in cooperation and said, "This is human nature. I can understand." However, it was hard to say if the Totoro could understand it. He thought to himself, Chapter 21-26. Did I allow you to leave? 1. Yao Qi had calmed down, but it was impossible for him to apologize to a Totoro. As such, he didn't even look at Song and directly said to Cheng Xian and Ning Haolon, "Brother Ning, Brother Cheng, let's go somewhere else and continue our chat." Previously, they had a rather pleasant conversation in the private room. If it weren't for Cheng Xian and Ning Haolon wanting to see the Totoro he had locked up, they wouldn't have come down so quickly. Now that he wasn't going to argue with the Totoro, the three of them naturally wanted to continue chatting. At least, that was what he thought. However, Cheng Xian and Ning Haolon had already confirmed that this Totoro was the one they were looking for, and they no longer wanted to continue feigning civility with Yao Qi. However, judging from the current situation, Yao Qi clearly did not want to let go of this opportunity to befriend them. As such, the two of them exchanged a glance, and a hint of helplessness appeared in their eyes. After all, they were all part of the 8 great divine domains, and Yao Qi was one of the most valued members of the Yao family's younger generation. He was also a popular candidate for the young master of the Yao family, so it wouldn't be good for them to just walk away like this. However, if they were asked to continue chatting with Yao Qi, the two of them would definitely be unwilling. Just as the two of them were in a dilemma, not knowing what excuse to use to separate from Yao Qi, Song, who felt like he was being ignored, said with a hint of dissatisfaction, "Hey, you're from the Yao family, right? You just said you want to argue with me, right? Oomph. Who do you think you are? Do you think you can just let me off just because you want to?" Song's behavior was purely to find fault with them. Who asked it to hear the whispers of the two men just now? Moreover, in its eyes, because Cheng Xian had reminded that fellow from the Yao family, it had also classified him as an enemy. The unlucky Cheng Xian would never have imagined that his words of warning to Yao Qi would provoke Song's disgust. Otherwise, he would not have spoken so much. However, it was too late to say anything now, and he still didn't know that he had been blacklisted by Song. If he did, he would most likely cry. "Then what do you want?" Hearing Song's words, Yao Qi stared blankly for a moment, before gritting his teeth and asking. He couldn't stop thinking in his heart, how could this Totoro be so detestable? He didn't want to argue with her, but she couldn't. What was it trying to do? Yao Qi was quite depressed. If it wasn't for the fact that the Totoro clan had such a strong backing, he definitely wouldn't have let this Totoro go. But now that he was letting it go, this Totoro still wouldn't stop. How preposterous! Wasn't this clearly trying to make him angry? Wait a minute. Could it be that this was the Totoro's goal? Did he want to make me angry so that it would have a chance to fix me? Very quickly, Yao Qi had thought of this possibility. Furthermore, based on his brief interaction with this Totoro and his understanding of it, he believed that this Totoro was definitely capable of doing such a thing. When he thought of this possibility, Yao Qi became even calmer. He made up his mind that no matter how the Totoro provoked him, he had to remain calm, or else he would have fallen into its trap. "It's not what I want, but what you want." I threw these two guys down the building. One of them is your sister, and the other is your subordinate. The two of them have an affair. In addition, your sister doesn't just have an affair with him. Your subordinates are her backup mattresses, waiting to warm her bed at any time. Now that I've thrown them down and caused your Yao family to lose so much face, what do you think? What do you want to do to me? How do you want to deal with me? Azure said this pitifully, but the excitement in his dark eyes was undisguisable. Many people were speechless when they saw this. When Cheng Xian and Ning Haolan heard Song's words, their foreheads were filled with black lines. They didn't know how to describe their feelings. This Totoro was really too different. Furthermore, they could tell that this Totoro was deliberately looking for trouble. If Yao Qi didn't give an explanation for today's incident, it would be difficult to resolve the matter. Thinking up to this point, the two of them took a few more steps back, so as not to be angered by the conflict between Yao Qi and Song. When Yao Qi heard Song's words, the anger in his heart could raise the entire into the ground. His face turned from red to black, and the flame that had just been extinguished in his eyes instantly rose again. This damned Totoro had exposed Yao Manman's identity in public, and even exposed her scandal. Now, he couldn't pretend that he didn't know Yao Manman anymore. Seeing everyone in the hall pointing at him and the disheveled man and woman on the ground, he felt his face burning. The anger in his heart erupted like a volcano, unstoppable. However, he still kept a trace of calmness and clarity in his mind. He did not dare to act rashly, considering the backing of the Totoro clan. However, the cold air that was emitted from his body and his dark purple handsome face were enough to prove that he was extremely angry. When Song saw that Yao Qi was holding back his anger and not moving, he felt a little bored. His desire to teach Yao Qi a lesson suddenly faded. After glancing at Yao Qi, he said with a look of disdain, "Humph, the Yao clan is only SOSO." After saying that, it directly jumped onto a soft chair in the hall and lay down. However, its dark and bright starry eyes kept looking through the people in the hall, as if looking for the next target to bully. When the people in the hall saw it like this, they unconsciously took a few steps back to the corner to lower their presence and avoid trouble. For a moment, Yao Qi was the only one left standing in the middle of the hall, dumbfounded. The Yao clan was nothing more than this. The Yao clan was nothing more than this. Yao Qi was deeply provoked by these words. It must be known that the Yao family was incomparably sacred in his heart. He had never thought that one day he would be despised by Totoro, and this Totoro was one he could not afford to offend. This fact was a heavy blow to Yao Qi, and in the next second, he walked out of the inn in a daze. When the crowd saw this, they all felt a deep sense of sympathy for Yao Qi, and the inn manager couldn't help but run after Yao Qi. "Young Master Yao, you left something to shop." The shopkeeper's voice rang in everyone's ears. When they heard this, the corners of their mouths couldn't help but twitch. The things the shopkeeper was talking about, could he be referring to Yao Man and his subordinates? Poor guy, he was hit by the shopkeeper when he was down. At this moment, their sympathy for Yao Qi had reached an unprecedented level. However, they also understood why Yao Qi was so aggrieved. In this day and age, even small animals were not to be trifled with. Especially when she looked at the cute little guy, she had a strong background. With Yao Qi as a warning, everyone in the hall immediately wanted to scatter like birds and beasts, so as not to be captured by that bored Totoro. However, how could Song let them leave so easily? Song roared, "No one is allowed to move. If anyone dares to leave, I'll exterminate them." Chapter 21-27. Did I allow you to leave? 2. This aggressive, majestic, and blatant threat caused everyone to stop in their tracks and turn around with bitter faces, looking at Song pitifully. AI, who asked the other party to be a domineering Totoro. The braver one asked carefully, "Do you have any other instructions? What's the rush? Come and chat with me." Song Qin glanced at the person who spoke and said indifferently, "What do you want to talk about, Master Cat?" The man continued to ask, "Let me think. Right, you should have heard that God Lord Fogripple died, right? Song pretended to think for a while and then asked. Hearing this question, the nearby black-clothed man's expression immediately changed. He wanted to stop Song, but he found that he couldn't speak or move. It went without saying that Song must have controlled his movements. Sob, the black-clothed man wanted to cry. Wasn't this courting death? Of course, he would definitely be the one to die. His lord would not do anything to this Totoro. At this moment, he really wanted to buy a piece of tofu and kill himself, because it would definitely be better to die than to die in the hands of his lord. When the others heard Song's words, although their expressions did not change as drastically as the man in black's, they did not know how to continue. Discussing the life and death of the Divine Master in the Imperial City or in the inn that belonged to the Divine Master's estate would definitely cause him to die faster than the Divine Master. This realization made everyone remain silent. However, Chengxian wasn't afraid of that. When he saw that no one dared to answer Song's question, he smiled at Song and replied seriously, "I've heard about it, but I don't know if it's true." Of course, this news came from the Divine Master's estate. How could it be fake? Song said seriously, then gave Chengxian a look of admiration. His resentment towards Chengxian had also decreased a lot. Only this kid was willing to give him face. As for the others, none of them were good. The vengeful Song's dark eyes swept around, taking note of everyone present. "I'm a witness." Azure continued. At this moment, Chengxian did not know how to continue. Although there were rumors in the divine world that the Divine Master had died, the Chung family did not believe it at all. But seeing Azure's serious expression, he couldn't say his own thoughts. Thus, in the blink of an eye, he was like the others, silent. However, Azure didn't care that they kept silent. As long as he could achieve his goal, it was fine. The reason he came out today was to spread the news of Rhyme Ice's death. If he didn't cause some trouble for Rhyme Ripples, he would be very upset. Moreover, it would be easier for him to fish in troubled waters if the Imperial City was in chaos. How audacious! Who's spreading the rumor that the Divine Master is dead? Do you want to die? At this moment, hurried footsteps were heard from outside the inn. Then, a roar was heard by everyone. A group of men in black rushed into the inn and surrounded the people. "Where's the manager of the inn?" After the leader of the men in black surrounded the crowd, he asked about the whereabouts of the shopkeeper. A waiter came out from a corner, trembling. He stuttered. The innkeeper went to chase after young Master Yao. Instead of guarding the inn, he let people talk nonsense in the inn. Why did he run out to chase people? The leader of the men in black was quite dissatisfied. He was determined to teach the shopkeeper a good lesson when he returned. This was preposterous. How could rumors of the Divine Master's death appear in an inn that was under the Divine Master's estate? This matter was too serious. With this thought in mind, he turned his sinister gaze to the people present and asked again, "Who's so bold as to slander the Divine Master? Don't you want to live?" However, no one dared to answer his question. Between the Lord God's manor and the Totoro in front of them, everyone instinctively chose the Totoro in front of them, because their feelings told them that this Totoro could not be provoked. The leader of the men in black saw that these people did not give him any face, and his anger rushed to the top of his head. He released all of his hostility in an instant, and then a cold light flashed in his hand, and a sharp long blade appeared in it. Then the blade glowed, and with a bang, a small table in the corner was shattered. "Anyone who doesn't answer my question honestly will be at this table." The man in black's voice was exceptionally cold. Then he deliberately released his pressure. Immediately, the pressure on everyone increased greatly, and their breathing began to become irregular. Those who were slightly weaker already couldn't bear it, and their legs went soft, their faces instantly turning pale. The leader of the men in black had the strength of a divine emperor, while most of the people present were not very powerful. Therefore, most of them were a little scared by his scare. But in the next second, the person whose legs were weak and whose face was pale was the man in black. The pressure on everyone present was immediately reduced, and their breathing became smooth. Which senior is here? Please come out and meet me. The leader of the men in black felt that something was wrong and immediately lowered his attitude. He thought that his insolence just now had displeased a certain senior. Although this was the imperial city, the territory of the divine master's estate, he was not sure that his master would stand up for him. After all, his master had always been polite to the supreme divinity. "It's your grandpa," Song said indifferently, then jumped onto the back of the soft chair and began to berate the leader of the men in black. As soon as the leader of the men in black saw Song, cold sweat trickled down his back. Woo! Why was he so unlucky to actually meet this ancestor here? Even his lord couldn't do anything about it, and he was simply not enough in front of it. With just a glance, the leader's face turned even paler, and the hand that was holding the knife trembled. Now that things had come to this, how could he end it? The leader of the men in black was at a loss. I didn't know you were here. I'll take my men and leave now." The leader of the men in black thought for a while before stammering. After he finished speaking, he didn't dare to look at Song and walked straight towards the gate. However, he was stopped by Song after taking a few steps. "Does Senior have any other instructions?" Looking at Song, who was standing in front of him, the leader of the men in black wanted to cry, but had no tears. He was wrong. He shouldn't have bullied others. "Did I let you go?" Song Ching raised his eyes, his tone somewhat unhappy. When the leader of the men in black heard this, his heart suddenly thumped, but he still pretended to be calm and said, I was just afraid of disturbing your good mood. I won't disturb you guys any longer." "Don't. Since you're here, let's have a chat. It's more lively with more people," Azure said with a smile. When the leader of the men in black heard this, he really wanted to cry to death. However, he did not dare to act rashly, nor did he dare to reject her directly. Woo! He could not afford to offend this person. Chapter 21-28. Did I allow you to leave? 3. Seeing that the leader didn't speak for a long time, Song took it as a silent agreement. Then, Song ordered the waiter, "Quickly go and get some good wine and food. We have to have a good gathering today. This was really a meeting of fate. We are so fated to meet here and now. It was worth celebrating. Don't you think so?" Song had asked the last question to the leader of the men in black, and the leader could only nod his head helplessly. The pained expression on his face, as if his father had just died, made many people present feel sympathy for him. However, at this time, everyone present also understood that this Totoro was likely to be the one that was popular in the divine realm a while ago. Otherwise, the leader of the men in black, who had been so aggressive just a moment ago, would not have turned from a master into an obedient grandson in such a short time. From this, it could be seen how powerful this Totoro was. For a moment, everyone's respect for Song was like a surging river, but they were more regretful. Why didn't they dare to answer when Song asked them the question? This time, people's impression of them would probably not be good. AI. He had lost a great opportunity to get close to this Totoro. Everyone was filled with regret. However, they didn't have time to regret for too long. The waiter had already prepared the food and wine, and had even thoughtfully prepared a few tables. Although the topic they were about to talk about might be very terrifying, the waiter didn't have the courage to stop them. After delivering the food and wine, the waiter left the hall. If no one summoned him, he would never come out. Azure beckoned everyone to sit down. This time, everyone gave him face, and the leader of the men in black was brought to his side by Song. On the surface, it was to get close, but in reality, it was to monitor him closely. After that, under Song's command, everyone began to eat, but no one took the initiative to start a topic. Seeing this, Song could only talk to them about the death of Fog Ice. Song Bien eloquently explained the situation of the Fog Ice, and from time to time, he would point out a person to share his thoughts. However, every time he asked a person, he would bring the leader of the black-clothed men to increase the credibility of the matter. Just like this, after drinking 30 years, the people present who were originally skeptical were all convinced by Song that the Fog Ice had really died. Even at this moment, the black-clothed men felt that their master seemed to have really met with an accident. Some of the men in black who worshipped Wu Yin and had a lot of feelings for her even burst into tears on the spot. For a moment, the scene was quite chaotic. However, Song was quite satisfied with the result he created. Turning around, Song saw Ning Haolon sitting across from him with a silent smile. "Little fellow, aren't you going to express your opinion?" Kanglin asked directly when he saw that Ning Haolon was the only one who didn't speak. "My opinion doesn't matter," Ning Haolon said indifferently. Then, he picked up Song with one hand and the already drunk Cheng Xian with the other and went upstairs. In the room, Ning Haolon first threw Cheng Xian onto the bed, then held Song up in front of his eyes to meet his own. "You actually dare to hug me. You're quite bold." Song kicked his little legs and glanced at Ning Haolon as he spoke with a faint smile. "It's all right. Let's get to know each other. I'm Ning Haolon." Ning Haolon reached out and held Song's little hand. "The Ning family? You're here for me." Azure said, "It can be considered so. Where are they staying?" Ning Haolon asked. Actually, looking for Song was only one of the reasons why they had come to the Imperial City. The other reason was because of Lung Ruoxue and the others. They should be trapped. Hearing Ning Haolon's question, Azure's dark eyes became wet and his voice choked. Ning Haolon could tell from Azure's expression that he wasn't pretending. "What do you mean?" Ning Haolon was confused. Could it be that the Divine Master had found out that they had come to save her and locked them up? In reality, he and Cheng Xian had come to the Imperial City this time because they had heard from the Great Elder that they were here to save someone. Hence, they had wanted to see if they could be of any help. However, they had not been able to find Lung Ruoxue and the others after they had arrived at the Imperial City. Hence, they could only set their sights on the Totoro. Furthermore, if someone heard them asking about the Totoro, they would not be suspicious. After all, the Totoro was a hot topic in the Divine Realm. Many people had come to the Imperial City for the Totoro. When Ning Haolon heard Song's words, he couldn't help but worry. They entered the space created by the Rime Ice and have yet to come out. "I can't contact them either," Azure explained. "Then what do we do?" Ning Haolon was starting to panic. "I don't know." Vast Sea lowered his head and continued. "I want to create something to make Wu Yin shift her gaze away from her own space. This way, I might have a chance to help them." "Are you trying to lure the tiger out of the mountain?" Ning Haolon immediately understood. "Yes, but Wu Xiao won't leave the Divine Lord's estate easily, especially when she knows that someone has entered her space. Unless it's something extremely important, she will guard her space with all her might." Azure said somewhat gloomily. It was very clear that Lung Ruoxue and the others were taking a huge risk in saving those people, but it didn't stop them. It wasn't that it didn't want to, but it knew that it would be useless even if it stopped them. If it didn't let Nyo save those people, it would become a demon in her heart, which would be detrimental to her future cultivation. Furthermore, if those people were played to death by the fog, it would have a huge impact on Nyo. This wasn't something I wanted to see, so it could only compromise. And now, his compromise and his luck had brought about the disappearance of Lung Ruoxue and the others. With regard to this result, it was impossible to say that it didn't regret it. However, if this matter were to start over, it would still agree with Nyo's decision. Important matter? How big of a matter is it in the eyes of the Divine Master? Ning Haolon muttered to himself. His words caused Azure's spirit to flash as a slightly crazy idea slowly emerged in its mind. She will definitely leave when it concerns the safety of the Divine Realm. Azure said indifferently, such a thing wouldn't happen so easily." Ning Haolon was a little speechless. The safety of the firmament was not something that could be guaranteed just because he said so. If there's a problem with the barrier between the Divine Realm and the Nine Nether prison, she will also leave the God Lord's estate. Azure said, "That won't be easy. Who doesn't know that the barrier between the two realms is extremely strong? How could there be a problem?" Ning Haolon felt that Song's suggestion was impossible because the difficulty was too high. If you don't do it, how do you know that there won't be any problems? Song Qing shot a glance at Ning Haolon as she spoke with a calm expression. When Ning Haolon heard Song Qing's words, He could not help but open his mouth in shock. It couldn't be what he was thinking, right? Are you planning to destroy that barrier? Ning Howland's eyes were wide open as he stared at Azure, afraid that it would answer yes. That was a crazy idea. If the barrier between the two worlds was broken and all the evil ghosts of Netherworld prison rushed into the Divine World, it would be a great disaster for the people of the Divine World. No, I didn't. Song blinked its dark eyes and lied through its teeth. In fact, at a certain moment just now, it did have that crazy idea. However, it was the spirit of the god protecting Tower after all, and it was responsible for the safety of the god world. Therefore, no matter how willful it was, it couldn't do anything that would harm the god world. Therefore, that crazy idea appeared in its heart for a moment before it was cut off by itself. It cannot do that. Otherwise, they would be punished by the rules of heaven and earth. However, it could not deny that it was a good idea. Unfortunately, it had its own responsibilities. Therefore, he could only think of another way. Ning Howland's nervousness also eased a little when he heard Song Tsong's denial. Then, Azure changed the topic and asked about Ning Howland's plans. As they chatted, Azure decided to bring Ning Howland and Chung Xian back to the Divine Lord's estate to help him. After waking Chung Xian up, Song led them out of the inn. In the bracelet, Uncle Long and the others, who had been trapped in the misty spatial world, felt as if they were sitting on pins and needles. It had been a long time, but Shui and Little Brat Yi had not come out. Green Vessel was listless and silent, and the beasts were all listless. The entire space was dead, and such an atmosphere made Uncle Long and the others feel very uncomfortable. Shui is still not awake. All of a sudden, a cold voice rang out in the ears of Uncle Long, the others, and all the beasts. They looked at the owner of the voice in unison, their faces full of anticipation. When will Shui wake up? Uncle Long looked at the haggard, evildoer and asked carefully. I don't know, but Shui's injuries are no longer a big problem. The demon said faintly. He had come out to tell them this news in hopes that they would be at ease. After all, these people and beasts were just as worried as he was about Shui. Shui's damaged consciousness had almost recovered under the restoration of the origin of chaos. Therefore, he could finally put his heart at ease. Otherwise, he would not have cared about their feelings. That's good. Can we go in and see Shui? Hearing this, the master of the Ning family was relieved and asked timidly. Yes. The demon nodded his head. To Uncle Long, the beasts, and the rest, his permission was like a great amnesty, and they were overjoyed. Immediately after, the beasts rushed into the purple bamboo house. Uncle Long and the rest quickly followed after them, as if they were afraid that the demon would go back on his word. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.